The Screaming Tomb. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something wasn't right, even though everything looked normal? Like the silence was too deep or the air too still? Now imagine that, but inside an ancient tomb, sealed completely, untouched for centuries. And then, something inside had tried to claw its way out. Bones twisted in unnatural ways, long scratch marks on the inside walls, but no doorway, no crack, no way in or out, just a sealed chamber, and a question no one could answer. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something. Have you ever visited a place that felt haunted without a single ghost in sight? Maybe it was an old house, or a forest, or even a classroom that gave you chills for no reason. If you have, let me know in the comments where it was. You're not alone. Sometimes places carry energy, and sometimes they carry silence that screams louder than words. The story of the Screaming Tomb didn't begin with a grand discovery. It started with dust. A group of workers were clearing a site deep beneath a forgotten temple. Somewhere quiet, out in the desert where the winds speak more than the people do. They weren't even looking for anything, just digging. Then one of them noticed a strange echo, like the ground wasn't solid. They brought in equipment, cleared the stones, and found something strange. A flat, smooth surface, like a wall. But behind it, their tools rang hollow, so they opened it. Or rather, they broke through it, because there was no door, no seal, just stone that hid what was inside. And inside, silence. Thick, heavy silence. Until they saw the walls. They weren't decorated. No carvings, no paintings. Just stone, except on all four sides, deep grooves, scratch marks, human-sized, running across the walls like someone had used their hands to tear at the stone, and in the center, bones, curled, twisted, arms up, as if they had been shielding their face, as if they had died screaming. But here's the strangest part. The tomb had never been opened. No sign of a second entrance, no tunnel, no cracks in the stone. It was airtight. Whoever, or whatever, was inside wasn't placed there. They were trapped. Can you imagine that feeling? Being in a room with no doors, no windows, the walls closing in, the darkness breathing beside you. It's something we've all felt in small ways, before a big exam, during a lonely night, or even while lying awake, overthinking something you said years ago. That sense of being stuck, that fear that there's no way out. Now stretch that feeling for eternity and put it in stone. Researchers came. They scanned every inch of the tomb. They checked the air, the dust, the stone. No signs of digging, no evidence the body had been moved. The remains were old, very old, older than the temple itself. Some even believed the temple had been built over it, as if to keep it hidden. Others said the markings were fake, carved by someone else later. But the bones? They didn't lie. The joints were dislocated. The fingers were broken. The spine was bent in a way that didn't happen after death. What happened in that chamber? Some believed it was part of a ritual, that the person inside had agreed to be sealed for spiritual reasons, to cross into another world. But if so, why the scratch marks? Why the twisted pain? Others believed it wasn't a person at all, but a warning, a symbol carved into reality to scare off future visitors. But again, the bones were real, the pain was real. We like to think of the past as stories written in books, clean and organized, names, dates, events. But most of history is buried, lost, under dirt, drowned in oceans, or sealed in stone like this tomb. And sometimes it doesn't want to be found. I think what unsettles people about this story isn't just the mystery. It's the silence. The idea that someone suffered alone, unseen, and unheard. That their final moments were spent trying to escape a place no one else even knew existed. And that makes us think, how often in life do we scream in ways others can't hear? Not with our mouths, but with our thoughts, our fears, our pain? This tomb is a metaphor in stone. For feeling, trapped, for being forgotten, for the quiet desperation that can live behind a calm face. There's a strange comfort in mysteries like this, Not because they're solved, but because they remind us that not everything needs a perfect answer. Sometimes it's okay to sit with the unknown, to wonder, to feel, and maybe, by doing so, we hear the echoes of those who came before us, not in fear but in understanding. Before we move on, if you're still here, thank you. You're part of a rare group of people who find beauty in silence and curiosity in darkness. If you felt something in this story, consider liking the video or leaving a comment. Not just for me, but for the algorithm that decides whether others see this too. You can also subscribe if you want more stories that drift between reality and mystery. No pressure, just an open invitation, like this tomb once was. Now, let's keep going. There's still so much the past hasn't told us. Chants from caves. Have you ever heard a sound that felt like it wasn't meant to be heard? Something that sent a quiet chill down your spine, even though you couldn't explain why? Imagine standing in the middle of a cold forest in Siberia. The sky above is dark and endless. The trees are tall and silent, as if holding their breath. And then, from deep within a nearby cave, a sound rises. It's not wind. It's not an animal. It's a voice, but not quite. It's chanting, soft, slow, repeating sounds that don't match any known language, and they don't stop. People living nearby say it happens almost every night. Always from the same cave. Always the same rhythm. Scientists have gone there. They've recorded the sound, tried to study it, but no one has been able to explain what it is or where it's coming from. And here's where it becomes more strange. When they play the sound back to local villagers, some start crying, even though they don't know why. Others say they've heard that same sound in their dreams, long before ever stepping near the cave. It's the kind of mystery that doesn't just make you wonder, it makes you feel. Have you ever had that moment where a song, a word, or even a memory triggered something deep inside you, something hard to describe? If so, let me know in the comments. I'm truly curious where in the world you are and what sounds have stuck with you over time. This story isn't just about a cave or sound, it's about something deeper. About how we connect with things we don't understand. About how something as simple as a repeated chant can touch something ancient in us. When the first scientists tried to explore the cave, they brought machines and gear, thinking they would find a source, a speaker, an echo chamber, maybe even an animal. But they didn't find anything. Just smooth, cold walls and a strange warmth in the air, even when it was freezing outside. One of the researchers, after leaving the cave, said it felt like someone had been watching him the whole time, even though he was alone. Another one said the sound wasn't just heard. It was felt, like it was inside his chest, not just his ears. That kind of experience is hard to explain, but easy to believe if you've ever had one yourself. Like walking into a room and instantly knowing that something had happened there, even though nothing looked different. Or waking up from a dream that didn't make sense but stayed with you for days. There are things about this world, about our brains, our hearts, our memories, that we still don't fully understand. The chants from the cave are a reminder of that. Some think it's ancient memory, that maybe long ago people used to go into these caves to sing, to pray, to call out to something bigger than themselves, and now the sounds have stayed behind, like echoes from another time. Others think it's nature playing tricks, wind, water, temperature changes, all coming together to create what sounds like a voice. But here's the thing. Even if science finds a reason, the feeling doesn't go away. Because it's not just about where the sound comes from, it's about what it does to us, how it makes us pause, how it brings up feelings we thought we'd forgotten. In a way, that's what makes it more real. You don't need to understand something completely for it to be meaningful, just like how we can feel love without explaining it, or feel fear even when there's nothing visible to be afraid of. These chants remind us that some parts of life aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be felt, like standing in the rain and letting it soak through your clothes. Like listening to a song in a language you don't understand, but somehow know what it means. I think these caves exist all around us, not just in Siberia, but in everyday moments. A dark hallway, at night, a memory that rises out of nowhere, a silence that feels too loud, and in those moments, we're all explorers. We're all trying to listen closely, hoping to understand something just beyond our reach. If you're still watching, thank you. I hope you find something in this story that stays with you. If it made you feel something, even something small, consider liking this video or leaving a comment. It helps more than you know, and it tells the algorithm that quiet, thoughtful stories still matter. If you want more stories like this, ones that drift between reality and mystery, feel free to subscribe. You don't have to. Just think of it like entering the cave, only if you're ready. For now, take a deep breath, close your eyes if you want, and listen. Somewhere in the world, a cave is singing, and maybe, just maybe, it's singing for you. The living sacrifice. Imagine choosing to be buried alive, not as a punishment, but as an act of faith so deep it defies all modern logic. Have you ever made a choice so extreme that friends wondered if you'd lost your mind? Maybe you stayed, up all night studying for an exam, your eyes burning, just to earn that grade. Or perhaps you stood in a storm, rain pelting your face because you believed something bigger than yourself was waiting on the other side. If you've ever done something that felt both terrifying and necessary, let me know where you are right now in the comments. Before we dive into this ancient mystery, if you find yourself drawn to stories that sit between reality and the unknown, please give this video a like and subscribe for more gentle journeys into history's hidden corners. Deep in a forgotten valley, archaeologists uncovered a sealed tomb unlike any other. Inside lay a chamber large enough for a person to stand upright, with walls carved in delicate symbols and faded pigments that hinted at ceremonies of fire and shadow. In the center was a recent grave, as if someone had walked in and laid themselves down. The body was carefully positioned, hands crossed over the chest, face calm. It was not a corpse thrown into a pit or a warrior slain in battle. This person had entered willingly, their mind set on a journey that would end beyond life itself. Around the entrance, the marking spoke of a chosen one who would carry the prayers of the living into the realm of the dead. They believed that by offering their own breath, they could bridge worlds, bring blessings to their community, and ensure the soil remained fertile and the skies generous with rain. For most of us, the idea of giving ourselves completely feels impossible. We cling to our comfort zones, staying up late to finish a project, risking a broken heart for love, or braving a thunderstorm to reach shelter. But true living sacrifice, as this ancient ritual called it, meant nothing less than surrender. The chosen one would spend days preparing. They fasted until hunger whispered through their bones. They sat in silence, practicing mental stillness like meditation, but with the weight of finality pressing down. They rehearsed their final words, speaking to ancestors and future generations, weaving promises into the air. In modern terms, it is like training an AI to follow instructions perfectly, without question, no matter the cost. Yet even the most advanced machine lacks the human heart's capacity for belief, fear, and love. On the day of the ritual, the community gathered outside the tomb's entrance, faces lit by torchlight that cast dancing shadows on the stone. A hush fell, deeper than night, as the chosen one stepped forward. No guard held them back. No priest forced the decision. It was theirs alone. They walked into the chamber, the door sealing shut behind them with a final echo. The onlookers waited, some in prayer, some in tears, others in stunned silence. Outside, the wind picked up as if mourning or celebrating. No one could tell. Hours passed. The earth remained still. Then, when light began to fade, the tomb opened again. The chosen one emerged, eyes glazed but alive, carrying a small vessel filled with soil from inside the chamber. They collapsed, but they were breathing. They had crossed a threshold and returned, changed forever. Can you imagine standing on that threshold? You and silence, wrapped in a stone box underground. Just your breath, your heartbeat, and the faint glow of symbols carved by long dead hands. It is a feeling we glimpse in everyday life when we push ourselves to the edge. A marathon runner's final steps, a musician's last note before the crowd erupts, or a student handing in a thesis at dawn. In those moments, we meet ourselves in a way that nothing else can. We realize how fragile we are, how strong belief can become, and how hope can flicker in the darkest places. But the story doesn't end with a single day. The chosen one's return was both celebrated and feared. Some whispered they had been touched by gods. Others said they were marked by spirits they couldn't escape. Over the following years, the person spoke little. Their voice, once clear and bright, became soft and distant. They walked through villages like a ghost, offering blessings, but never truly belonging. Some nights neighbors reported hearing chants drifting from their home, words in a language no one recognized. These chants, they said, soothed the restless dead. They carried echoes of the tomb's silence, binding the living community to the unseen world in a delicate balance. This ritual raises questions about sacrifice and survival that stretch beyond ancient valleys. In our relationships, how often do we give pieces of ourselves willingly? How many times do we stay silent to comfort someone else, or wake in the middle of the night to offer help, even when we are exhausted? In our mental health journeys, how many of us have stared down our own fears, closed ourselves in the quiet of our minds, and emerged changed? And as we build technologies that learn from us, will we ever understand the cost of asking something, human or machine, to give everything? The Chosen One's story lingers in that soil-filled vessel, now kept in a distant museum. It reminds us that the line between offering and losing oneself is thin. That belief can carry you deeper than darkness and bring you back into the light, and that the quietest voices often speak the loudest truths. If this story stirred something inside you, curiosity, awe, or even a quiet fear, please share your thoughts below and tell me where you felt it most. Did it echo a moment in your own life, or did it feel entirely new, like a voice from another time calling out to you? Remember to like this video if you believe that thoughtful, gentle stories deserve to reach more ears. And subscribe for more journeys into history's hidden corners, where mystery and humanity meet. Now, take a slow breath, let the story settle, and stay with me for the next legend waiting just beyond the shadow. Eyes of Fire. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt a sudden chill, as if they were staring right through you? Maybe it was a teacher catching you daydreaming, or a friend who knew exactly what you were thinking, and it made you pause. If you've ever felt that, let me know where you were when it happened in the comments below. Before we dive in, if you enjoy stories that blend mystery with calm reflection, please give this video a like and subscribe for more gentle journeys. Deep in a remote valley, dancers would gather beneath a full moon. They wore masks carved from ancient wood and inlaid with gemstones that caught and held light. At first glance, the masks looked like art, but when the moon rose high, their eyes came alive. Tiny fires seemed to blaze within the stones. The glow pulsed, shifting from red to orange, as if the mask itself were breathing. Villagers watched in awe and fear. They felt as though the dancers were more than human. They were spirits of the forest come down to dance among them. It all started with a single mask, discovered by a wandering traveler in a collapsed temple. The stones were smooth and warm. When moonlight struck them, they glimmered with an inner fire no torch could mimic. Word spread. Soon, a local chieftain commissioned dozens of masks for a night of ritual. He believed they would call down protection from the spirits. He hoped the glowing eyes would keep enemies at bay. And for a time, it seemed to work. No. Raids came. The crops thrived. The people slept soundly. But after a few seasons, something changed. The glow grew brighter. At first, it comforted the villagers. It lit the way home. It guided lost children back to safety. Then, during a storm, masks were worn to calm the howling wind. Yet the eyes burned through the darkness, eerier than lightning. Some said they heard whispers inside the stone, voices in a language no one could understand. When the rain finally stopped, the masks were left on doorsteps like warnings, not gifts. Those who touched them felt a prickling on their skin, the same shock you feel when you grab metal in the cold, but stronger. This simple ritual mask became a symbol of power and fear. It reminds me of how we use phones today. We hold them close. We feel the warmth in our palms. A screen lights up our faces in the dark. We trust them to guide us. Yet sometimes we feel uneasy, as if the device knows too much. It watches our habits, our searches, our secrets. Like those masks, our phones carry an inner light that both comforts and unsettles us. One night, under a bright moon, a young dancer named Asha took the stage wearing a new mask. The fire in her eyes seemed alive. As she moved, the flames flickered like living embers. The crowd watched, entranced. Then, as her final spin ended, she lifted her hand and the glow leaped higher, lighting the entire clearing. In that instant, every face in the crowd looked up, shadows dancing on their skin. It felt like the world held its breath. And then the lights went out. Every torch, every candle extinguished at once. Total darkness. Only the mask's eyes remained, burning like twin suns. Heartbeats drummed in the silence. When the torches snapped back on moments later, Asha stood alone. The mask lay at her feet, its fire gone. The air felt heavy. No one spoke. Yet each person felt the same thing, a thrill of awe mixed with fear. They had seen power beyond their control. They had felt the pull of something ancient. That moment became legend. Asha's dance was retold around fires. People spoke of the mask's gaze as if it had judged them, as if it had seen their hidden fears. What makes something so simple, a wooden mask with stones, so powerful? It's not the craftsmanship alone. It's the light in the darkness. It's the pause that comes when we are forced to look at something strange, like waking up in an empty house with the lights off and hearing your own breath echo. We feel small, and we feel connected to the world around us and to the hidden parts of ourselves. Those gemstone eyes tapped into our deepest fear and our deepest wonder. In today's world, we chase bright things. We chase screens that promise answers, social feeds that promise connection, news headlines that promise excitement. Yet we still crave mystery. We crave the moment when the screen goes dark and we are left alone with our thoughts. We want to feel something real, with our hearts racing or with tears welling up because we remember a long-lost dream. The glowing mask reminds us that light can comfort and frighten, that truth can heal and unsettle, that the unknown can teach us more than all the answers. Perhaps that is why these masks faded from history. People took them into hiding. They buried them in deep caves and secret chambers. They erased the memory of their glow so future generations would not abuse their power. Because when light lives inside stone, it reminds us that we carry light inside ourselves too. It can guide us or burn us. It can reveal who we are or hide our faces in shadow. If this story stirred something in you, fear, wonder, curiosity, please share your thoughts below. Tell me if you've ever seen a light that felt alive, or if you felt the weight of silence in a crowded room. Your stories help build our community, and I'd love to know where you are and what you felt. If you believe calm, thoughtful stories still deserve a place in your feed, please hit the like button and subscribe. That simple click helps more people find these gentle tales of mystery and human curiosity. Now take a quiet moment for yourself. Let the thought of those glowing eyes settle, and join me soon for our next journey, just beyond the moonlit shadows. The cursed flame. Have you ever held a candle in the wind and watched its flame dance, refusing to go out no matter how hard the gust blew? That small, stubborn light can feel alive, almost like it has its own will. If you've ever felt that way, fighting to stay kind, to stay hopeful, even when everything around you was stormy? Let me know where you are right now in the comments below. If you love thoughtful journeys into history's greatest mysteries, please give this video a like and subscribe before we step into the tale of a flame that burned without fail for 9 centuries. Imagine a temple hidden deep in a mountain valley, its walls carved by generations of worshippers, its stones worn smooth by unseen hands. At its center stood a simple brazier, a metal bowl filled with oil and wick. Yet the fire inside never went out. For 900 years, through storms that uprooted trees and rivers that swelled into floods, that flame remained. It was more than a ritual. It was a promise, a living symbol of faith and perseverance. Villagers said it was a gift from the gods, a tether between heaven and earth, and they tended it like a precious child, feeding it oil, whispering prayers, gathering each morning to watch its glow. Think of the small flames in your life, a kind word when you felt lonely, a friend checking in when you were overwhelmed, a memory that flickered back to life and warmed your heart. We tend these sparks in our own way. We nurture hope through tough days. We feed our inner light with simple joys, and we shield it from the gusts of doubt. Yet no matter how strong we try to be, sometimes our flame flickers. We find ourselves tired, afraid, or lost in darkness. Now imagine a fire that never wavered, that never asked for rest, that burned on night and day, century after century. For centuries, the temple's location remained a secret. Only devoted priests knew the path through winding trails and hidden gorges. They passed down the instructions in whispers, writing them on palm leaves sealed in clay jars buried beneath the altar. Outsiders tried to find the temple many times. Explorers came with maps and torches, but they always returned empty-handed, convinced the valley shifted like sand, or that their minds played tricks on them in the mist. Some even questioned if the temple was real, or just a legend told to comfort people through hard times. Then, one day in the 19th century, a traveler found an old priest who had grown too frail to climb the mountain. The priest, with trembling hands, whispered the path one last time. The traveler set out at dawn, the sky a soft gray, the air cool on his face. He climbed rocky slopes and crossed narrow ledges until he reached the hidden valley. There, nestled between 2 peaks, he saw it. The temple's stone walls, dark and silent, with smoke curling above a single brazier. He stepped forward, heart pounding, and touched the cold metal of the bowl. Yet when he struck a flint to relight the fire, sparks fell hollow. Then he noticed the wick still smoldering, glowing faintly. He breathed on it, and the flame leapt back to life, bright and steady. News of this discovery spread like wildfire. Scientists, mapmakers, and curious souls flocked to the region. They studied the brazier, the oil, the wick, every detail. They tested the fuel in labs. They measured the temperature. They tried to reproduce the effect, but nothing explained how the flame had survived centuries of rain, of floods, of cold. Some claimed the oil was mixed with rare minerals. Others spoke of natural gas vents beneath the temple floor. Yet even these theories fell short. They couldn't account for the single, unbroken thread of light that spanned 9 human lifetimes. In our own lives, we look for explanations when something defies reason. We turn to science to explain love, to psychology to explain fear, to technology to explain memory. We build models, we write code, we test and retest. We ask AI to learn from patterns, to predict our needs. And yet, for all our knowledge, we still uncover things that surprise us. We discover that human connection can heal wounds no medicine can touch. We find that a simple act of kindness can restore someone's faith in themselves. We see that our minds can dream of solutions that no algorithm could generate. The cursed flame reminds us that some mysteries exist to keep our wonder alive. Over time, the temple's fame became a double-edged sword. Pilgrims arrived by the thousands. They brought offerings, they burned incense, they chanted prayers. The fire glowed brighter under their gaze, as if fed by their devotion. But with crowds came risk. A careless torch could have set the wooden beams alight. A spilled oil vase could have snuffed the flame. and yet it never went out. During a violent storm, when the wind howled like a wounded beast, the brazier stood firm, the flame holding its place, a beacon of calm in chaos. Some pilgrims claimed they saw spirits dancing in the smoke, others said they heard distant voices singing lullabies to the flame itself. But every story has a turning point. As tourism grew, the valley began to change. Shops appeared. Roads were carved into the mountain. Lights flickered at night. And on one clear morning, a careless guide left a lantern on the steps leading to the temple. The glass cracked in the damp air, and a single ember floated into the brazier. The villagers watched in horror, certain their sacred flame would die. They held their breath, the entire valley silent. Then, with a flicker and a sigh, the flame shifted color, turning blue for a moment before settling back into its warm glow. The guide wept, believing he had erased centuries of faith in an instant. But the flame endured. Today the temple stands open to all, its secret path known no longer. The flame still burns, though it has become a symbol more than a miracle. Tourists snap photos, monks recite prayers, and historians debate its origin. Yet each time you light a candle for someone you love, or cheer for a friend in need, or push yourself through a stormy night, you honor that same spirit. That flame lives inside each of us. Fragile, yes, but capable of lasting far longer than we ever imagine. If this story warmed your heart or sparked your curiosity, please share your thoughts below. Have you ever witnessed a light that refused to die? Or held on to hope when everything around you darkened? Tell me your story and where you are in the world right now. And if you believe tales of quiet wonder still belong in your feed, please hit the like button and subscribe. Your support helps these gentle tales reach others who need a spark of mystery in their day. Now take a slow, steady breath. Let that inner light glow softly and stay with me for our next journey into history's hidden fires. Moon Blood Ceremony. Have you ever watched the moon rise on a quiet night and felt your heart stir in a way you couldn't explain? Maybe you've lain awake before an important test, your mind racing with possibilities, or you've tracked your moods over weeks, noticing patterns you couldn't name until years later. If you've ever felt drawn to rhythms larger than yourself, like the changing seasons, the ebb and flow of tides, or the cycle of your own breath, let me know where you are in the comments below. And if you find solace in stories that weave history with mystery, please tap the like button and subscribe before we dive into the Moon Blood Ceremony. Deep in a remote highland village, people gathered once a month under a red-tinged moon to perform a ritual they believed would open the mind's second eye, a way to see beyond the world we know into something deeper and unseen. They called it the Moon Blood Ceremony because on the longest night, when the moon shone low and its glow carried a rusty hue, they mixed drops of their own blood, drawn with care and respect, with sacred herbs and water blessed by simply standing in moonlight. Then they drank the mixture in silence, their senses sharpened by hunger, by fasting, or by hours of quiet chanting. In that moment, they said the world shifted. Sounds became richer, colors deeper, and thoughts flowed like rivers unbound by reason. What feels like anxiety before a storm or the rush before speaking in front of a crowd is a faint echo of that heightened state. We all know the pulse that quickens when something important looms. We feel it when we're on stage, when we open an email marked urgent, or when we wait for a message from someone we care about. That jittery energy is a whisper of the clarity the villagers sought. They believed that by offering a small drop of blood, a symbol of life, they honored the moon's power to guide human cycles, just as the moon guides the tides. It wasn't meant to be violent or dark. It was an act of trust, like leaning on a friend's shoulder in the dark, like writing down your fears in a journal, then feeling lighter when you close the cover, like turning off your phone and noticing how quiet the world can be. Over generations, the ceremony became the village's compass. It helped them predict storms, decide when to plant crops, and understand dreams that felt urgent. Some elders remembered details of storms before they arrived, warning neighbors when the sky was still clear. Others healed emotional wounds by guiding restless minds through visions of light and shadow. They said the ceremony trained their inner senses, much like how we train an AI model today by feeding it data until it sees patterns we cannot. But whereas machines learn from code, the villagers learned from their own blood, their own fears, and their own hopes. Of course, outsiders often judge them harshly. Travelers spoke of superstition and danger. They warned of poisoning, hallucinations, and madness. Some modern scientists visited to study the ceremony under sterile lights. Mixing blood samples and analyzing herb compounds, they found nothing poisonous. They heard few consistent visions. They concluded it was a placebo or a mass suggestion. Yet the villagers never stopped. For them, science could explain the mechanics, but not the meaning. They felt a bond to the moon that no lab report could break. In everyday life, we also chase explanations. We look up symptoms on the internet instead of listening to our bodies. We trust algorithms to tell us what we like instead of trusting our own taste. We ask technology to predict our moods instead of paying attention to our own feelings. And yet sometimes, we still crave an experience that transcends data. We want a story we can touch, a ritual we can feel with our veins, not just our screens. That is the paradox of modern life. We yearn for both certainty and wonder. We build safe routines, yet dream of breaking free. We use technology to connect, yet hunger for human touch. The moon blood ceremony sits at the crossroads of those forces. It teaches us that belief can sharpen perception, that community can offer guidance when reason falls short, that even a single drop of blood, given willingly, can anchor us in the great shifting rhythm of the world. In a world of metrics and measurements, it reminds us that some things cannot be weighed or tested, they must be lived. If this story moved you, even a little, please share your thoughts below. Tell me if you've ever felt a pull you couldn't explain, or if you've ever tracked a personal rhythm that surprised you. Your stories help build a community that values quiet mystery and shared wonder. And if you believe thoughtful tales still deserve a place in your day, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support brings more gentle journeys into history's hidden ceremonies. Now take a slow breath. Feel the silent pull of the moon above you and stay with me for our next exploration just beyond the light of day. Shadow Dancers Society. Have you ever been so focused on something, so deeply lost in a moment, that the rest of the world seemed to disappear? Like when you study all night and forget to eat, or when you walk under heavy rain but don't notice how wet you are because your thoughts are somewhere far away. If you've ever felt that strange mix of stillness and motion inside your own body, share your story in the comments and tell me where you're listening from. And if you enjoy slow, thoughtful journeys through history's quiet mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe before we step together into the strange world of the Shadow Dancers Society. In a forgotten part of the world, surrounded by thick forests and cold winds, there once existed a small society who believed that the human body could open doors to another world, not through sleep or silence, but through movement. They were known only by whispers, the Shadow Dancers, men who entered dark, empty halls and danced for hours without eating, drinking, or sleeping. Not for applause, not for celebration, but because they believed that through this non-stop movement, they could reach something sacred. Locals said they saw flickers of light dance behind the old wooden walls during the ceremonies. Others claimed to hear music when no musicians were present. The dancers never spoke after a session. Their eyes looked deeper, almost as if they had seen something that couldn't be explained with words. At first it sounds like a myth. How can a person dance for hours without rest? How can motion lead to something deeper than thought? But then you remember moments from your own life, when you walked for hours without noticing your feet, when you cleaned your room without stopping because your mind needed silence, or when you cried in private while still going through the motions of a normal day. The body remembers things the mind forgets. That's what the Shadow Dancers believed. They thought that by pushing the body into a rhythm that couldn't be broken, the mind would eventually stop resisting and something else, something older, something quieter, would take over. They said the divine wasn't found in words or temples, but in the quiet space between exhaustion and surrender. They didn't pray aloud. They didn't sing. They danced in silence, only their feet tapping softly on cold stone floors. To prepare, initiates would fast for a day or two, speak to no one, and wear nothing that made noise. When the moment came, they entered the darkened hall, where a single candle flickered. Then they began to move. Slowly at first, one step then another, a turn, a dip, a sway. There was no music except for the rhythm of their breath, the beat of their hearts, and the brushing sound of their feet against the ground. As the hours passed, they fell into a trance. Some wept, some smiled, some collapsed, and yet those who completed the ceremony said they saw visions, shapes made of light, voices that spoke without sound, memories from other lives, or feelings that had no name. In our world today, we often rush to label things. We call it meditation. We call it exhaustion. We call it altered states. We build machines to track brain waves. We write programs that try to guess what we're thinking. But for the shadow dancers, there were no labels, just movement and presence. They didn't try to understand. They simply allowed. That's something we sometimes forget. Not everything has to be solved. Some experiences are not puzzles, but invitations, like standing under a night sky without checking the weather, like watching someone you love sleep and not needing to say a word, or like listening to music that makes you cry, even when you don't know why. There's a power in staying with a feeling, even if it makes no sense. That's what the dancers gave themselves to, a feeling beyond reason, a rhythm older than thought. The society had rules. No one could speak for a full day after dancing. They had to walk barefoot for 7 days, touching the earth. They had to write a single sentence about what they saw, but they could never show it to anyone. These sentences were sealed in clay and buried beneath the floor. Hundreds of tiny tablets remain, unreadable now, like soft whispers from a time that refused to explain itself. Imagine burying a part of your soul in the ground, not to hide it, but to free it. The society never advertised itself. It grew quietly, like moss on stone. A brother would pass the practice to a brother. A teacher would choose one student. They believed that if too many people joined, the rhythm would break, and the divine would leave. But when asked why they danced, members gave the same reply. Because when I dance, I remember what I am. That line echoes across time. In a world filled with noise, with endless opinions and constant scrolling, sometimes we forget what we are beneath all the layers. We forget the stillness underneath our thinking. We forget that we are not just brains with plans, but hearts with longings, and bodies that carry more wisdom than we realize. If this story touched something inside you, a memory, a dream, or even just a quiet curiosity, please let me know in the comments. Have you ever moved without meaning to, like your body knew something you didn't? Or have you ever done something hard for no reason, except that it felt right? Share your story. And if you believe in gentle, thoughtful stories that offer more questions than answers, please like and subscribe. These soft tales need quiet hearts to carry them. And as we move on to our next journey, take a moment. Feel your breath. Feel your body. And maybe, just maybe, take one small step into your own rhythm and see what it remembers. The mirror gate. Have you ever looked into a mirror late at night and felt like something was looking back? Not your reflection, but something else? Maybe it was just a trick of the light or the way your mind wanders when everything around you is quiet. But for a moment you might have wondered if the mirror was more than glass. If you've ever felt that strange pull in the dark or had an unexplainable moment with a reflection, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And before we dive into tonight's quiet mystery, please consider liking this video and subscribing so we can keep traveling together through stories that are soft, thoughtful, and just a little bit eerie, deep inside a jungle where no paths, Remain in the trees, press close, like guardians of time. A strange object was found. Buried beneath tangled roots and the collapsed stones of what might have once been a shrine or home, there it lay. A perfect black mirror, smooth as water, cold as silence. There were no carvings, no name, no markings to claim who made it or why. Just the mirror, round and dark, reflecting nothing at all. The team who uncovered it said that, when they looked into it, their faces didn't come back the same way. Something about the surface made them feel like they weren't alone. Some laughed, others felt uneasy, but all agreed on one thing: it didn't feel like just a piece of glass. Local villagers, when shown photos, went quiet. One old man whispered that such mirrors were once called gates. They weren't made to show your face, but to call something else into the room. Not ghosts, they said. Not demons, but memories, ancestors, echoes. They believed that if you sat in silence and stared into the mirror long enough, you wouldn't see yourself. You'd see who came before you. Not like watching a movie or reading a book, but as if the person was really there. A grandfather you never met, a mother from a past life, or someone you were meant to become. It sounds like legend, a superstition, but then again, have you ever looked at an old photograph of your family, someone you never knew, and felt a strange warmth or chill? Have you ever dreamed of a place you've never visited, but woke up certain you'd been there? These small, human moments remind us that memory isn't just in the mind. It lives in feelings, in silence, in reflections. That's what the mirror gate may have been. Not a tool, not a machine, but a quiet invitation. Sit, be still, let the silence speak. In modern life, we fill our days with sound, music, notifications, talking, thinking. But in the ancient world, stillness was a doorway. When the sun set and the jungle went dark, people would sit by candlelight and place the mirror before them. They'd breathe slowly. No speaking, no asking, just waiting. And slowly, something would come. A shape, a whisper, a feeling that didn't belong to you. And yet, it felt familiar. That's the strange part. Those who used the mirror didn't believe they were summoning something scary. They believed they were remembering, that the line between the living and the gone wasn't a wall but a curtain, and the mirror, just a window between the two sides. Science can explain many things: reflections, optical illusions, light and shadow, and maybe that's all it was. But sometimes, knowing how something works doesn't tell you what it means. A mirror is just glass and metal, yet we all have one, in our homes. We look at it to check our face, to fix our hair, to make sure we still exist. And sometimes, when we're alone, we look deeper. We ask quiet questions. Who am I becoming? What am I hiding? Am I proud of what I see? The mirror gate might not answer with words, but it might show us the shape of a feeling we've forgotten. A man who used it was said to have seen a woman crying. He didn't know her face, but he woke up days later and wrote a letter to his sister, one he'd meant to write for years. Another person claimed he saw a child smiling in the mirror, and for the first time in a long while, he forgave himself for something he'd carried in silence. Maybe it's not about spirits at all. Maybe it's about honesty, about seeing more than we usually allow ourselves to see. The jungle where the mirror was found has since grown thick again, as if trying to hide the memory. The mirror itself was placed in a museum, but it's said that it now reflects only darkness, no matter the light around it. And maybe that's for the best. Some windows are not meant to stay open forever, but the story remains. A black circle buried in silence, a reflection that isn't yours, and a question that lingers long after the mirror is gone. What would you see if you stopped and truly looked? If this story made you pause, even for a moment, I invite you to leave a comment. Tell me what thoughts came up. Where are you watching from? And if these soft, slow stories bring something calm to your day, please like and subscribe. There's a quiet rhythm to these mysteries, and sometimes just listening to them helps us hear ourselves again. Cradle of silence. Have you ever tried sitting in complete silence? No music, no traffic, no voices, not even the hum of a fan, and felt something shift inside you? At first, it might feel peaceful, but slowly it becomes strange. The quiet grows louder, and your thoughts feel heavier. Now imagine being born into that silence, not for a moment, but for months. If you've ever had an experience where silence felt more powerful than sound, share it with me in the comments, and tell me where you're listening from. Because quiet, mysteries like this connect us across time and space. If you enjoy calm, slow stories that explore the soft edges of human experience, please like this video and subscribe before we begin. In a forgotten part of the world, long before electricity or even written words, there existed a small sect of people who believed the soul entered the world not fully formed, but in pieces, soft, delicate, and easily shaped by the world around it. And they feared sound, not just noise, but any vibration, any voice, any whisper that might interrupt the delicate soul trying to settle into the human body. So when children were born into their community, they were placed into cradles carved from thick, hollowed wood and wrapped in heavy cloth. These were not ordinary cribs. They were built to block sound. The walls were lined with materials that softened even the loudest cry. No singing, no talking, no laughter. The caretakers wore soft shoes. They communicated through hand signals. They fed the babies gently, without speaking. They believed that if an infant could grow in perfect silence, for the first few months of life, their soul would arrive pure, untouched by chaos, unmarked by the noise of the world. This belief wasn't about punishment or cruelty. It was a kind of devotion. They believed silence was sacred, and to give a child that sacred gift from birth was the most loving act imaginable. It's hard to imagine in our modern world where the first thing many newborns hear is the soft voice of a parent, music from a phone, or the beeping of hospital machines. We talk to babies before they can talk back. We play them lullabies and read them stories, even if they don't yet understand the words. Because to us, sound is a way of showing love. But what if, for a moment, we imagine the opposite? What if silence, too, could be love? Think of times in your life when someone sat with you without speaking, when you didn't need words to feel safe, or when your mind was racing and the only thing that helped was lying still and letting the quiet hold you. The sect believed that silence gave space for the soul to settle, that in noise the soul scattered, but in quiet it found its shape. As the babies grew older, usually around 6 or 7 months, they were slowly introduced to sound. First, soft wind chimes, then a single human voice whispering stories of the stars and rivers. Then, the rhythm of a drum echoing like a heartbeat. It wasn't that they thought sound was bad, they just thought it was too strong, too early. Like sunlight on a newborn's skin, it had to come gently. Over time, these children grew into adults who were known for their calm nature. They spoke softly, moved slowly, and often paused before answering. Outsiders described them as listening to something no one else could hear. But as time passed, and the world changed, the practice faded. People began to settle near rivers and markets. Noise became part of life. The cradles were lost, the rituals forgotten. And yet, the idea never truly disappeared. Even today, some people feel an urge to turn off the world, just for a while, to unplug, to be still, to return to something quieter. We build meditation apps. We take walks in nature without headphones. We lie in bed and listen to the hum of nothing, just to remember what stillness feels like. Maybe we're trying to return to something ancient. Maybe deep down we remember what those people believed, that silence isn't emptiness, it's a doorway, a room inside us that's always waiting, always ready, if we just stop and listen. So what do you think? Could a soul be shaped by silence? Or is it the sounds around us, the lullabies, the voices, the songs, that make us who we are? If this story stirred something in you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever found peace in silence? Or been overwhelmed by noise? I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more gentle journeys through forgotten truths and quiet wonders, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. There's so much noise in the world, but sometimes the quiet stories, the ones told in soft words with no rush, are the ones that stay with us the longest. Raincaller's bones. Have you ever stood on a hilltop just before a storm? When the sky turns a strange silver gray, the wind pauses like it's holding its breath, and the air feels thick and charged, almost like it's waiting for something. In that moment, something ancient stirs inside us, something that feels older than memory. If you've ever felt that quiet pressure in the sky before the rain, tell me in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from, because these small mysteries bind us, no matter the distance. And if you enjoy calm, thoughtful journeys through forgotten wonders, please like this video and subscribe before we begin. High in the remote mountains, where clouds brush the stone and trees stand like silent watchers, something strange has been found. Human remains, not scattered or hidden, but carefully arranged beneath lightning-struck trees. Bones laid out in perfect patterns, never buried, never disturbed by time or weather. The trees they rested under were always the same kind. Twisted, gnarled, and blackened by ancient strikes. Trees that had clearly been hit more than once. Trees that somehow were still alive. Locals call them storm fingers. And the bones? They call those the raincallers. For generations, hikers and wanderers passed by these quiet places, whispering stories but never staying long. They said these mountaintops weren't just high. They were sacred. The kind of sacred that doesn't need a signpost or a statue. The kind that hums in your chest when you step into it. Archaeologists were puzzled. The bones were too old to date precisely, but showed no sign of violence. No injuries, no tools, no grave goods, just the bones arranged in peace beneath trees that seemed to drink lightning. And what's stranger, the arrangements were nearly identical. Arms folded, legs crossed, heads tilted toward the sky. Not random, not careless. Like they were, placed there on purpose. Some believed these were ancient rituals. Others thought it was coincidence. But among local mountain tribes, passed down only in soft stories told around firelight, there's another idea. That long ago there were people, chosen ones, quiet ones, who could hear the clouds before the thunders spoke. People who felt the sky inside them. They weren't feared, they weren't worshipped, but they were respected, because they could walk into a dry season, sit in stillness beneath one of these trees, and wait for the storm to come. And it did. The story goes that they didn't shout or dance or make noise. They simply listened. For days, sometimes weeks. They felt the pressure in their bones, the tension in the leaves, the pull in the wind. And when the time was right, they stayed under the tree, waiting. Not hiding from the lightning, but inviting it. And when the rain came, it washed the mountain, filled the rivers, softened the earth. Their job was done. They didn't come back, but their bones stayed, perfectly still, untouched, like the mountain itself protected them. Whether that's true or just a soft myth, it makes you think about how we've always tried to connect with nature, not just through tools and science, but through feeling. Have you ever known a storm was coming without checking the weather? Or felt unusually calm just before the sky cracked open? Our ancestors didn't have apps or radar, but they had instinct. They had stories. And maybe in moments of deep stillness, they had understanding. The raincallers, if they were real, might not have seen themselves as heroes. They might have simply believed that sacrifice wasn't always about pain. It could also be about listening, about giving yourself to something larger than you. Maybe they believed that the rain wasn't something to control, but something to join. In today's world, we don't climb mountains to call storms, but we still seek meaning in silence. We sit with our thoughts when life feels heavy. We close our eyes when we miss someone. We pause at a window when the first drops fall, just watching the sky shift, That's our version of the old ritual, and maybe, somewhere deep inside, part of us still remembers. So the next time the air turns thick and still, and the wind stops moving, ask yourself, what would it feel like to wait, not for safety, but for something beautiful to arrive? And if you feel something stir in that silence, you're not alone. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt that deep connection to weather? Has silence ever taught you something words couldn't? And if you'd like to walk further into these forgotten paths, please like this video and subscribe. There's a rhythm to these mysteries. Not loud, not fast, just soft enough to hear, if you're willing to listen. The breath ritual. Have you ever paid such close attention to your breath that the world seemed to disappear? Not during exercise or meditation, but in a quiet moment, maybe before sleep, or while staring at the ceiling, or sitting alone after something heavy happened. You breathe in slowly, hold it, and then release. And for a brief second, everything slows down. That breath becomes the only thing that feels real. If you've ever felt that strange focus on your own breathing, tell me in the comments. And let me know where you're listening from. We often overlook how breath shapes our days, our moods, and even our thoughts. But in certain forgotten places, breath was not just survival, it was a ritual, and that ritual changed people, sometimes in ways that can't easily be explained. Before we begin this slow, thoughtful journey together, I'd love if you could like this video and subscribe for more stories like this, quiet, mysterious, and gentle. Now let's begin. In a quiet corner of the ancient world, far from cities and trade roads, there once lived a group of people who believed that breath was more than air. To them, breath was memory. Breath was light. Breath was the thread that tied the body to the soul, and they developed a practice that came to be known only through whispered fragments, the breath ritual. No one truly knows where it began. Some say it came from mountain dwellers who listened to the wind until it sounded like a song. Others say it came from desert wanderers who could feel the heat shift with every inhale. But wherever it began, the practice was the same. They would gather in a circle, sometimes around a fire, sometimes under stars, and begin. It started slowly. One breath in, hold, one breath out, silence, then again, over and over. But not randomly. The breaths followed a pattern, counted in silence, matched by everyone, a shared rhythm, a shared focus. Imagine sitting in complete stillness, feeling your lungs expand and collapse in perfect timing with those around you. No words, no music, just breath. Over time, they would change the pattern, longer inhales, shorter exhales, or the opposite, holding for longer, holding until your chest ached and your ears rang. But no one moved. No one panicked. They were taught that fear was just another breath, waiting to be exhaled, and something strange would begin to happen. The room would shift, time would blur. Some described colors behind their closed eyelids. Others felt their bodies grow heavy, like sinking into the ground. A few would faint, their minds slipping into a place they couldn't quite name. But most stayed awake, awake in a way that felt more real than dreams. They said in those moments, you could see who you really were. You could feel memories you didn't know you had. One story tells of a young boy who participated for the first time. He held his breath too long and passed out, collapsing gently like a leaf falling from a tree. When he woke, he was crying, not from pain, but from something softer. He said, he saw his grandmother's hands folding cloth in the sunlight. She had died before he was born, but he described the pattern of her shawl, the way her fingers moved. His mother wept. The details were perfect. No one had ever told him. Another story tells of a woman who had felt lost, disconnected, anxious, uncertain of her place in the world. She joined the ritual not expecting much, but during the final phase, when the breaths were short and rapid like the beating of wings, she said it felt like her body disappeared. Not in fear, in peace. She felt connected to something larger. Not a god, not a vision, just presence. and when she opened her eyes, everything looked the same, but felt different. She said the world was no longer something she was moving through, it was something moving with her. Of course, there were skeptics. Some tried to repeat the ritual and felt nothing but dizziness. Others warned that holding breath for too long could be dangerous, and maybe it was. But for those who practiced with care, the ritual was never about control. It was about surrender. They didn't force the experience. They invited it. Slowly, gently, like waiting for rain. And maybe that's what made it so powerful. In a world that always wants faster, louder, more, this was something slower, softer, something you couldn't rush. You had to be still. You had to trust your body. And most of all, you had to listen to the quiet rhythm that was always inside you but often ignored. Think about how often we forget to breathe. During stress, we hold it. During anger, we clench it. During fear, we shorten it. But breath is always there. It is the most ancient part of us, before thought, before language. The first thing we do when we arrive in this world, the last thing we do when we leave. That alone makes it sacred, and perhaps those ancient people understood that better than we do. Their ritual wasn't magic. It wasn't a shortcut to something divine. It was a return, a remembering, that even in the noise of life there is something simple, something always waiting, something you can control when everything else feels lost, your breath. So maybe tonight, before sleep, try it. Sit quietly. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. And notice what stirs in the silence. Maybe you'll find peace. Maybe you'll remember something soft. Or maybe you'll just feel your own heart, steady and patient, waiting for you to notice. If you've ever had a moment where breath felt more than just breath, share it in the comments and let me know where you're listening from. These stories are more than history. They are reminders. And if you find comfort in these calm, thoughtful journeys, please like this video and subscribe. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't told with words. They're felt in the space between breaths. The handless priests. Have you ever wondered what a person would give up in exchange for complete peace? Not just time or money, but something physical, something deeply personal, like the ability to touch, to hold, to create. Imagine waking up tomorrow with no hands, not because of an accident, not because of a tragedy, but because you chose it, chose to give them up for something greater than yourself. Would you still feel whole? If this thought stirs something strange in you, or if you've ever felt like you sacrificed more than anyone understood, share it in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe if you find comfort in thoughtful, slow journeys through mysteries of the past. Now let's breathe gently and step into a story that quietly challenges what it means to let go. In a hidden monastery, tucked deep within the folds of a forgotten mountain range, a quiet tradition once took root. So quiet, in fact, that it survived mostly in fragments, in broken carvings and whispered legends. They called them the handless priests, a small group of monks who, over time, removed their own hands, not out of punishment or shame, but as an offering to silence, to stillness, to devotion. It sounds impossible, unbelievable, and yet across different cultures in different centuries, we find signs of them, sculptures showing robed figures with stumps where hands should be, ancient drawings of ceremonies not filled with fire or chanting, but with quiet kneeling and red cloth. One story tells of a boy who arrived at the temple seeking peace. He had grown up in noise, in anger, in the kind of life where every day felt like a fight. He wanted nothing more than quiet, not just around him, but inside him. He watched the monks, silent and still, tending to gardens with their elbows, painting with brushes held in their mouths, writing poems in the dirt with their feet. And one day, after years of living among them, he made the choice too. It wasn't dramatic. No one clapped. No one cried. It was simply a step, away from the world, into something slower, And somehow these monks survived, even flourished. They grew their own food, painted their own walls, and were known to hum soft songs that travelers swore could calm even the loudest thoughts. But why? Why would someone give up such a central part of being human? The answer, perhaps, isn't logical, but emotional. The monks believed that hands were a symbol of doing, of reaching, of wanting, and in a world filled with grasping for success, love, power, pleasure, they wanted to do the opposite, to let go, to become still. They saw the removal of their hands not as harm, but as a gentle rebellion against needing more, a surrender to simplicity. And what's truly mysterious is how long some of them lived. Medical records, rare and incomplete, suggest they survived for decades, without modern tools, without doctors. Some believe they trained each other in how to stop the bleeding, how to bind the wounds, how to heal. Others say they prepared so slowly and carefully that by the time it happened, the body accepted it. But even then, that doesn't explain the calm. The joy that visitors described, it doesn't explain how they made art or how their gardens grew so full. Maybe that's the real mystery, that somehow in losing something so essential, they found a kind of peace the rest of us are still chasing. Think of it like this. Have you ever tried to disconnect from your phone even for a day? The urge to check, to scroll, to respond, it never stops. Our hands are always busy, always doing, even when we don't need to. And yet, when we finally put everything down, sit in a quiet room, watch a candle flicker, or listen to soft rain on the window, there's a part of us that remembers what it's like to just be. The handless priests lived in that space all the time. They weren't fighting for meaning. They were being it. Their existence raises questions we still struggle with today. What are we without action? Without creation? If we stop doing, do we still matter? In a way, their story isn't just about hands, it's about identity, about control, about how far we'll go to escape the pressure of constant achievement. And maybe that's why their story lingers. Because even though we might never make their choice, we understand the desire underneath it. The longing for quiet, for meaning, for surrender. It makes us ask what we've given up and what we're still holding on to, even if it no longer serves us. Have you ever let go of something you thought you needed, only to find out it brought you peace? Maybe it was a job, a relationship, a dream, or maybe it was smaller, a habit, a fear, an expectation. Let me know in the comments. Your story might help someone else recognize their own, and if this quiet reflection spoke to something inside, you please like this video and subscribe. We'll keep walking together through gentle stories, thoughtful mysteries, and the quiet spaces where understanding grows. Because sometimes the deepest truths are not found in action, but in stillness. Painted sleepwalkers. Have you ever found yourself walking somewhere and, when you arrived, you couldn't quite remember the journey? Like your mind drifted somewhere else, and your body just moved on its own. Maybe it happened during a walk, home after a long day, or while doing a routine chore so many times that your thoughts wandered far away. If you've ever felt this strange gap between action and awareness, share your story in the comments and let us know where you're listening from. Now, before we begin, I invite you to like this video and subscribe if you enjoy slow, thoughtful journeys through the quiet corners of history. Let's step gently into a mystery that blurs the line between body, mind, and memory. In a dry, windswept land filled with tall grasses and jagged hills, there once lived a group of people who believed that the path between the spirit and the earth could only be walked without the interference of thought. They had no written language, and few carvings remain. But what they left behind were stories, passed from one soft voice to another. Stories of people who walked not with purpose, but in surrender. Covered in patterns drawn by hand, with paints made from crushed stone and the oil of wild seeds, these individuals would begin their journeys at dusk. Their eyes would lower, their chests would rise and fall slowly, and then, without speaking, they would begin to walk. No food, no water, no map, just movement. Their feet touched dirt, stone, sometimes even fire-warmed sand. They walked through forests that hissed with night wind, over hills where silence pressed close. And yet, when they returned, sometimes days later, they would say they remembered nothing, not the steps, not the sights, not the hunger or thirst, only the feeling of having been somewhere else. To them, these journeys were not acts of endurance. They were rituals of emptying, of stepping out of the waking world and allowing something quieter to take over. Their painted skin told stories older than memory, symbols believed to keep them safe, or guide them, or perhaps let the earth itself recognize them as something more than human. They said the paint helped open a door, not one made of wood or stone, but a door inside the mind, a door we often keep shut because we're too busy, too worried, or too afraid to look beyond it. But in these rituals, they let the door swing open, slowly, silently. And something else stepped through. Some believed it was the voice of their ancestors. Others said it was the earth speaking back. But whatever it was, it guided them. They didn't stumble or get lost. They didn't suffer, even without food or sleep. And when they returned, they brought back small pieces of something unexplainable, fragments of dreams, images of faces they'd never seen, whispers that echoed in their ears long after the paint had faded. A traveler once followed at a distance, hoping to understand. He watched as one painted figure moved steadily across rocky terrain for hours, barefoot, untouched by exhaustion. When the ritual ended and the figure stopped walking, he asked where they had gone. The response was soft. "I don't know, but I feel clean." Clean, not in the way water makes us clean, but in the way silence can clean a crowded mind. That's what they were chasing, not visions, not gods, not fame. Just a return to stillness, to a version of themselves unburdened by memory, by fear, by thought. In a way, we do versions of this even today, when we walk to clear our head, when we lose ourselves in music, when we stare out of a moving car window and feel far away, even though we're right there, that strange peace, that gentle distance. It's something we understand, even if we don't talk about it often. Some neuroscientists today might call it a trance state. Psychologists might connect it to deep dissociation. But these terms, while helpful, don't quite capture the mystery. Because mystery isn't just about what we can measure, it's about what we can feel, quietly, when no one is looking. And the painted sleepwalkers felt something we are still trying to explain. Their stories speak to deeper themes. How the body remembers what the mind forgets. How ritual can become a form of healing. How silence can be more powerful than speech. They also remind us of something delicate, that maybe, underneath all our thoughts and identities and memories, there's a part of us that longs to just walk, not to go anywhere, but to return to a rhythm older than words, a rhythm that lives in breath, in footsteps, in the soft sound of wind passing through leaves. And that brings us back to you. Have you ever felt this way? Like you were moving, but someone else, or something deeper, was steering, maybe during a late-night walk, or during a quiet morning when the world was still asleep. If so, share it in the comments. Let someone else know they're not alone, because these stories aren't just about the past. They're about the parts of us that remain unchanged. And if this story brought you peace, or sparked a memory you hadn't visited in a long time, I invite you to like this video and subscribe. Together, we'll keep exploring these quiet mysteries, slowly, gently, and always with care. Because sometimes the most powerful journeys are the ones we take when we aren't fully awake, and the ones we never quite remember. The Stone Bell. Have you ever been in a quiet room and heard something so faint that you doubted your own ears, like the soft creak of floorboards or the distant hum of a heater, and yet it felt as clear as a shout? If that moment has ever made you pause and lean in, even just for a second, let me know where you were in the comments below. Before we step into this ancient mystery, Please tap that like button and subscribe if you love slow, thoughtful stories that whisper instead of shout. Imagine a tall, narrow chamber carved into a mountainside in ancient Asia. The walls were smooth, worn by centuries of wind and water, and the air was cool and still, so still that your own breath sounded loud. At the center of this chamber sat a large, unremarkable rock, gray and pitted with age. But when a monk struck it with a small wooden mallet, the sound that filled the room was nothing like a rock's usual dull thud. Instead, it rang out clear and bright like a deep bronze bell, the note lingering in the silence for several long seconds. Villagers said the rock had always been there, long before any temple was built, and that it carried within it the voice of the mountain. They believed that by striking it in silence rituals, they could call down calm and courage, as if the sound itself carried healing energy. Think of times in your life when sound seemed to matter more because of the silence that came before, like the first ring of your alarm clock after a deep sleep, or the ping of a message when you've been waiting for good news, or the single clear chime of a church bell in an empty street at dawn. Those sounds stand out because everything else is still. They cut through the quiet and ask you to notice them. That is what the monk sought with the stone bell. In everyday moments, we chase louder and faster. We fill our days with music, podcasts, phone calls, notifications. We do it to feel connected, to stay informed, to banish loneliness. But sometimes, filling the noise only hides something deeper. It hides our own heartbeat, our own breath, our own thoughts. In the stone chamber, the monks would sit for hours before the ritual, in complete silence. No whisper, no rustle, not even the sound of their own clothes against their skin. They called it listening to nothing, a practice meant to still the mind and make space for something ancient and wordless. When the moment came, the leader would step forward, lift the mallet, and strike the rock once. That single note would fill the chamber. The sound would rise and fall like a wave, and in that wave they believed they heard the voice of the earth itself. After the bell rang, they remained silent for an hour, simply absorbing the feeling. Some said they felt a shift in their thoughts. Worries that had clung to them like shadows faded. Tension in their bodies loosened. Emotions that were stuck, grief, anger, fear, seemed to flow out with the echo, leaving calm in their place. I remember a moment in my own life when I sat in a quiet hospital corridor, waiting for news, my heart pounding so loud I could barely think. The silence around me was heavy, but then the intercom crackled to life with a single word, and everything changed. That one clear sound gave shape to my fear and allowed me to breathe again. It is the same paradox the monks embraced, that a single sound rising from perfect silence can carry more meaning than 1,000 words. In modern times, we often look to technology to calm us. Meditation apps that play soft tones, noise canceling, headphones that mute the world, guided breathing exercises that track our inhale and exhale. We even train AI to recognize patterns in our voice to detect stress or sadness, so that a machine can tell us when we need a break more than we can tell ourselves. But none of those tools can replicate the stone bell's simplicity. No power needed, no electricity, just one small mallet and a rock hidden in plain sight. The ritual bridged human belief and the natural world. It taught that language is not always spoken, that sometimes the loudest message is carried in a single note, that sometimes the greatest courage comes after we face our own silence. Imagine attending a crowded wedding where the music stops and a single harp string is plucked. Even with dozens of people around, all eyes and ears turn toward that one note. In that moment, everything else fades away. We share the experience. We feel connected. The monks believed the stone bell note not only calmed each person, but tied them together, creating a shared space of peace. Over centuries, travelers brought stories of this rock to distant lands. Some scholars tried to explain it scientifically. They analyzed the stone's mineral makeup, checked for hidden metal veins, even tested the air pressure inside the chamber. Yet none of it could fully explain why the note lasted so long or why it shifted in tone depending on who struck it. To the monks, that mystery was part of the gift. They said each person's mind and heart colored the sound, like a finger painting melody. Today, when we listen to music playlists curated by algorithms, we hear songs chosen to match our moods. Technology tries to predict what we need, but it can only guess. The stone bell, in its own way, responded to minds and souls wandering through silence. It reminds us that sometimes the best thing we can do is to listen, not to fill our ears with constant input, but to sit with the quiet until a single sound teaches us something new. So perhaps tonight, after everything quiets down, try this. Find a silent corner. Sit. Take a breath. Listen. If you can, find something small. A spoon tapping a glass. A friend speaking a soft word. A door closing. Notice how that sound feels when it follows silence, and let it change you for a moment. If this story resonated with you, please share your own experiences of sound and silence in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from and what single sound stands out in your memory. And if you believe gentle, thoughtful stories still have a place in your day, please like this video and subscribe. There are many more ancient echoes waiting to be heard, and I'd be honored to explore them with you. Buried in circles. Have you ever seen something so perfectly done that it made you question how it was even possible? Like watching someone draw a perfect circle by hand, or seeing a child solve a puzzle without any help. It's that quiet kind of wonder that stays with you, not because it's loud or flashy, but because it feels strange and beautiful at the same time. If you've ever felt that quiet pause, let me know where you were in the comments. Your story might help someone else feel seen. And if you like gentle stories that help you wind down and wonder a little deeper, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This story starts in a dry, lonely field where the wind moves slowly and the ground looks like it hasn't been touched in hundreds of years. A team of archaeologists had been digging for weeks, expecting to find pottery or tools, maybe some forgotten coins. But what they found instead stopped them in silence. Human remains, but not buried in rows or placed in boxes, or even laid flat as we usually imagine. These bodies were arranged in spirals, perfect, smooth curves winding inward like the shape of a seashell or the whirl of a storm. Some were tightly curled, some wide and open, but all were set in careful, curved lines. No shovels, no tools were found, no markings, no sign that the earth had been disturbed recently. Just the bones, buried deep in a pattern so exact that it looked designed by something beyond human. That's the strange part. These graves couldn't have been faked. Soil tests showed they had been undisturbed for centuries. The bones showed no signs of being moved or arranged later. Somehow people long ago had created these spiral graves with nothing but their hands, or something we still don't understand. And they had done it over and over again, across different sites, as if it was part of a larger story we've forgotten. Think for a moment how hard it is to draw a spiral in wet sand at the beach. You start out fine, but halfway through, your line bends the wrong way, or the curve gets uneven. And that's just with your finger, above ground. Now imagine shaping a human-sized spiral beneath the earth, in silence, in a time with no machines or maps or rulers. How did they do it, and why spirals? Some believe it was a symbol of the afterlife, that the spiral helped guide the soul away from the body, like a path winding back into the stars. Others say it was about returning to the earth in the same way seeds spiral in nature. Think about it. We see spirals in everything from sunflower heads to galaxies. Even the patterns in your fingerprints curl and loop in spirals. It's almost as if the people who buried their dead this way were trying to say something very old and very quiet, that life does not end in a straight line, but turns and folds back on itself. Have you ever felt stuck in a cycle? Repeating thoughts? Repeating days like you're walking in circles but not sure how to stop? That feeling, though uncomfortable, is something humans have always lived with. We try to make sense of it by building stories, rituals, even graves, to help us feel there's a purpose to the turns. These spiral burials may be one of those ancient answers, a reminder that what feels like being lost might actually be part of coming home. We often think of technology as something modern, but patterns are a kind of technology too, ways of using shape and space to speak without words. Today we use algorithms to spot spirals in weather systems, in stock markets, in human behavior. AI learns from loops. It sees what we repeat and tries to guess what we'll do next. But these ancient graves suggest that long before algorithms, people were already thinking in patterns. They didn't just live in the world, they tried to shape it in a way that reflected something deeper, something quiet, something eternal. The researchers who found these graves were shocked. Some cried, not out of fear but out of awe. Because when you see something that doesn't make sense and yet feels completely intentional, it humbles you. It reminds you how little we really know about those who came before us, and how much of their wisdom might still live in the earth, waiting to be seen. Some of the graves held single people. Others had pairs or groups of 3. Sometimes they were adults, other times children. The spacing between bones was exact. The curves never wobbled. In one site, the spiral matched the pattern of a local river bend. In another, it aligned with the stars overhead. Was this just coincidence? Or were they trying to connect heaven and earth with shape alone? Even today, when we feel lost or grieving, we make shapes without knowing why. We light candles in circles. We sit in rings with loved ones. We walk in quiet circles when trying to think. Our hands move in spirals when we fidget. Our thoughts loop when we try to remember. Maybe it's because circles feel safe. They have no sharp corners. They don't trap you. They just gently lead you back to where you began. I once sat by a small pond tracing a stick in the mud. I didn't mean to draw anything. But when I looked down, I'd made a spiral without thinking. It felt calming, like I'd made a small map of my feelings without needing to explain them. These graves feel like that too. A message left not with words but with motion. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever felt like you were spiraling, but found peace in the turn? Or been comforted by something, small and repetitive, a song, a walk, a quiet gesture? Let me know where you're watching from and share your story in the comments. Your words might become someone else's calm. And if you believe that old mysteries can still teach us gentle truths, please like this video and subscribe. There are so many more forgotten shapes in the earth, some built with hands, some built with hope, and some like these shaped in silence, waiting to be understood not with science alone, but with stillness, curiosity, and care. The bone flutes. Have you ever heard a sound so strange, so thin and distant, that it didn't feel like music, but like memory? A sound that made your skin rise, not from fear, but because it awakened something quiet inside you, something you couldn't name. Imagine standing on a still hill at sunset, the air barely moving, and suddenly hearing a single, long note carried by the wind, soft, shaky, and impossibly old. That's what witnesses described near an ancient burial site where flutes were found, not made of wood or stone but of human bone. Let that sit with you for a second. Not carved to entertain, not played in joy or celebration, but used for one moment only, for funerals. These instruments, shaped from the remains of ancestors, were made to play one note. Not a melody, not a tune, just one long, haunting tone. And somehow that one note was enough. If you've ever heard a sound that stayed with you, maybe a whistle from far away, or a strange echo late at night, I'd love to hear where you were when it happened. Feel free to share your experience in the comments. It might connect us in ways words can't. And if thoughtful mysteries like this help you unwind and feel gently curious, please like this video and subscribe. There's more to explore, softly and slowly. When archaeologists first uncovered these bone flutes, they didn't recognize them right away. At first glance, they looked like hollow sticks or broken tools, but closer inspection revealed smooth holes, spaced with careful intent, and edges worn down as if by breath. These flutes were often made from the thigh bones of adults, strong, straight, easy to shape, but some were smaller, lighter, clearly made from younger remains. The thought alone makes one pause. These weren't created out of cruelty or art. They were part of a belief system, one that saw the body not as something to be hidden after death, but as something that could still speak. And what it said wasn't loud. It was just one tone. That's all they needed. One single note to mark the moment a soul crossed over. The flutes were played only once, during the funeral, and after that, they were buried, either with the person or nearby, never used again. That's the part that feels strangely sacred. These weren't tools passed down or played again. They were instruments of release. Imagine standing in a circle, watching someone breathe into the bone of a loved one, letting out a soft, trembling note as the only farewell. No speeches, no grand rituals, just sound and silence. In today's world, we often use many words when someone leaves us. We try to explain, remember, honor, but sometimes words can't hold what we feel. That's when a sound can step in. A single, gentle note, like a sigh that comes from deep inside, like how the wind moves through a narrow window and makes a soft whistle, or how a kettle hums just before boiling. It's not trying to be music, but somehow it is. These bone flutes remind us that sound doesn't always have to be beautiful to be meaningful. It just has to be true. Think of a moment when you were grieving, or saying goodbye to someone, even silently. Did a sound mark that moment? Maybe it was a car passing in the distance, a bird call, a door creaking closed. We attach meaning to sound without realizing it. And long ago, people did this with purpose. They believed the note from the bone flute didn't just signal death, it helped the spirit move on. Some even thought the breath of the living passing through the bone helped guide the soul into the next place, like wind catching a small sail. There's something powerful about that image. One person exhaling, not for themselves, but for another, into the hollow of a life once lived. In a way, it's like a soft promise: you are not forgotten, you are not alone. We do this even now in different ways. We light candles, we whisper names, we play songs at memorials. We don't always know why, but we feel that the gesture matters. We try to give shape to sorrow. These ancient flutes did the same, in the simplest way possible. A single breath, a single note, and silence. From a psychological view, the idea of connecting breath, sound, and memory can help us process grief. It gives us a place to put what we don't understand. Music therapists today know that even the softest sounds can unlock deep feelings. We hum to babies. We sing to ourselves when nervous. We listen to calm sounds when we can't sleep. Imagine if AI one day could recreate the exact sound those flutes made, not just technically, but emotionally. A machine learning from grief, not in words, but in tone. Could it help us remember differently? Or heal more gently? The past has ways of showing us new things. These bone flutes were not about perfection. They didn't need to play scales or songs. They didn't need to impress. They were made for one moment only. And sometimes, one moment is enough. I once found an old wooden whistle in a box at my grandfather's house. It didn't play well, just one sad little note. But holding it, I felt like I could hear the echo of his younger days. That whistle made no real sound. But in my memory, it plays still. That's the kind of quiet power these flutes carry. If this story brought you stillness, I invite you to leave a comment below. Where are you watching from? Have you ever heard a sound that meant more than words? Something small but unforgettable? Your story might help someone else feel understood. And if you'd like to keep exploring forgotten mysteries together, gently and curiously, please subscribe and like this video. There's more to hear. Not loudly, but deeply. Because some of the most powerful messages in history were not shouted. They were whispered or played on the wind, one breath at a time. The Laughing Mask. Have you ever smiled even when you didn't feel like it? Maybe to hide your nerves before an exam, or to keep a friend from worrying, or even to make peace with something that quietly hurt. That strange feeling of showing joy on the outside while something else stirs within is something many of us know. But what if that smile wasn't just a habit or a social mask, but something sacred? Imagine this. Deep underground, in the darkness of an ancient burial chamber, resting beside the remains of someone long gone, lies a carved mask, stone, smooth, weathered by time. But instead of sorrow or seriousness, the face on the mask is smiling, not a gentle smile, but a wide, unmistakable grin, almost as if the person behind it had just heard a joke, or had a secret they were still keeping, even in death. These were called the laughing masks, and the mystery isn't just in how they were made, but why. If you've ever found yourself smiling at the wrong time, or laughing to make a heavy moment feel lighter, share your story below. It's strange how often humor steps in when nothing else can, and if gentle mysteries like this one help you feel calm and curious, consider liking and subscribing. It helps build a quiet community of thinkers like you. The masks were discovered in small tombs throughout ancient regions, often placed directly on the faces of the dead. Their mouths were open in strange, joyful curves. Their eyes often squinted just enough to mimic real laughter. But there was no comedy here, no stage, no audience, only silence, stone, and smiles. Some scholars believe they were meant to confuse the spirits, a way of tricking whatever forces visited the dead into leaving them alone. Others think it was a message to the living that even in death we should not fear, that perhaps the person had accepted their fate with joy. Or maybe the smile wasn't for the spirits. Maybe it was for us. Imagine grieving someone you love. You enter the tomb, heart heavy, mind full. But instead of a somber image, you see a laughing face, familiar, calm, and oddly comforting. It doesn't erase the pain, but it softens it, just enough. Like someone squeezing your hand without words. These masks invite questions, but they also hold something quietly universal. In moments of deep stress, before a performance, during a fight, after hearing difficult news, many of us smile. Not because we're happy, but because the body remembers something the mind sometimes forgets. That joy can be armor. That laughter, even small and quiet, is a kind of defiance. Some modern therapists even use this idea. They teach clients to fake a smile during sadness, not to deny it, but to gently interrupt it. The muscles send a signal to the brain, one that says, "You're still here." That's the strange paradox of these masks. They're made of stone, solid, cold, but they carry warmth. They show a face we recognize, a reminder that even in the darkest places, the human instinct to smile still finds a way. We do it without thinking. Before we say goodbye, before we let go, before we fall asleep. Even AI systems today are being trained to recognize emotional cues in faces. But what would they make of a smiling mask on a dead body? Would they read it as joy? As mockery? As peace? That's the trouble with symbols. They don't explain themselves. They make you feel something without telling you why. And that feeling can linger, just like when we dream of someone smiling at us long after they're gone. These masks weren't all the same. Some were made from wood, others from clay or bone. Some looked playful, others almost wild, like they had heard something no one else understood. In one burial, archaeologists found a series of masks stacked together, each smiling slightly differently, as if capturing the stages of laughter from a small chuckle to a deep, belly-shaking laugh. And yet, they were buried, with care, not tossed, not hidden, placed like treasures, like truth. Think about the times you've laughed when you were supposed to cry, or smiled at someone who hurt you, not because you forgave them, but because it gave you power. That tension, the space between feeling and expression, is where these masks seem to live. They're not just tools of ritual, they're mirrors of human resilience. In ancient belief systems, it was common to think of death as a journey, and like any long journey, it could be dangerous. Some thought spirits would try to follow, or confuse the soul, or bring it back. But what if the soul left laughing? What if joy was the passport, the protection, the disguise? We often think of the afterlife as a place of judgment, but maybe, to some, it was just the next room, and they wanted to enter it with a smile. One researcher suggested the masks weren't just for the dead, but for the living too, that mourners would place them on their own faces during funerals, to show courage, to honor the life that was, to remind themselves that laughter does not mean forgetting, it means remembering differently. And in a strange way, we still do this. We tell stories at wakes that make people laugh. We bring up silly moments, clumsy jokes, odd habits, not because we don't miss the person, but because laughter helps carry the weight of missing. It lifts it, even for a breath, even for one shared moment. So maybe these masks weren't there to confuse spirits. Maybe they were there to comfort us. A soft voice carved in stone that says, "It's okay to laugh, even now, especially now." I once found a photo of my grandfather, smiling in a way I'd never seen before. It was crooked, almost mischievous. I don't know what made him smile like that, but every time I look at it, I smile back. That's what these masks feel like. A smile across centuries, a grin that needs no words. If this story touched you, or reminded you of someone who smiled in the face of hardship, I invite you to share their story below. Where are you watching from? What face do you still see when you close your eyes and think of love? Your memories matter, and if you enjoy these quiet mysteries full of wonder and reflection, please like this video and subscribe. There are many more smiles waiting to be understood, not painted, not photographed, but carved gently in the silence of time. Sacred walking trees. Have you ever walked through a forest and felt like something was quietly watching, not in a scary way, but as if the trees themselves knew you were there? As if the stillness around you wasn't really still, just patient. Now imagine walking through that same forest in the morning, only to return in the evening and notice something strange. A tree has moved. Just a few steps, maybe a few feet, but definitely not where it was before. You check the ground, no roots, no marks, it's just there, standing like it had always belonged, but in a new place. In the remote forests of Peru, people have spoken of these walking trees for generations, not in stories or fairy tales, but in whispers passed down, almost with a kind of respect. These trees, said to be part of ancient rituals, were believed to move when no one was watching. Slowly, silently, and always at night. And somehow, they were still alive. No roots in the earth, no signs of being planted or carried. Just motion, over time, across sacred ground. If you've ever seen something in nature that felt too strange to explain, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Maybe a shadow that moved wrong, a flower blooming in the wrong season, or a path that seemed to change. And if stories like these help you relax, think deeply, or even sleep more peacefully, please consider liking and subscribing. Together, we can keep exploring gently. The forest where these trees were found wasn't a usual forest. The ground was soft, the air always damp, and everything seemed to breathe a little slower. Local people didn't walk through it after dark, not out of fear but out of respect. They believed the forest had its own rhythm, and the trees had their own will. The trees themselves weren't tall. Most were medium height, with bark that shimmered faintly in moonlight. Their leaves made very little sound, and at the base of each trunk, something strange. No roots, no anchoring into the soil, just wide, thick stumps that pressed lightly against the earth, like they were resting, not rooted. Scientists who visited the site tried to measure the movement. Over days, they marked the location of certain trees with small stones, and when they returned, the trees had moved, only slightly, but enough to confirm what locals had said for centuries. One researcher described it as impossible to explain, but harder to deny. They thought maybe it was the soil shifting or maybe strong winds, but then it happened on calm nights, on flat ground, and only in one part of the forest, nowhere else. Some began to wonder if these trees were doing something trees shouldn't be able to do. Think of it like this. Imagine placing a chair in your room, then coming back hours later and finding it had turned slightly, just enough to make you wonder if you remembered it wrong. That's how this felt. Not dramatic, not wild, just quietly impossible. The walking trees became part of spiritual practices long ago. Shamans believed they carried messages between the worlds, that when the trees moved they were aligning something, like how we might adjust a picture frame to sit just right. But what they were aligning, no one could say. Some believed they followed the stars. Others thought they walked toward sound. There's even a story about a traveler who played a flute in the forest each evening, and every morning the trees were closer to his camp. Just a little, just enough. When asked why he wasn't afraid, he smiled and said, "Because they're listening." What if some parts of nature are more awake than we think? We already know plants respond to light, water, even sound. They grow toward music. They change color under stress. Some release chemicals when touched. What if movement is just another form of response, but one we're too quick to dismiss? It reminds me of how we treat people sometimes. If someone changes slowly, over time, we barely notice. But those changes matter. A person becoming more patient, more distant, more kind, more closed off. These slow movements, like the trees, are easy to miss, but deeply important. Some scientists believe the walking trees might actually move through a kind of slide, like lifting parts of their base and shifting over time, using moisture in the ground and a network of underground fungi, almost like slow-motion walking. But even that explanation doesn't feel full, because the trees don't just move, they choose. Not every tree moves, not all the time. Only the ones in that ritual circle, only in the sacred part of the forest. It's as if belief itself shaped behavior, like how a group of people can change the energy of a room, or how shared silence can feel heavier than words. That forest has rules, and those trees follow them. Whether that rule is spiritual or biological, no one knows. The idea of moving trees isn't new in mythology. From ancient European tales of forest spirits to African stories of trees that walk at night to drink water from lakes, the idea has always been there, in the background, just close enough to feel real. Maybe it reflects something deep in us, a wish for the still things to move, for the quiet things to act, for the world to be more alive than it appears. In mental health, we often talk about feeling stuck, like we can't move, even when we want to. These trees, in their own strange way, are reminders that even what seems still can shift, if given time, space, and mystery. Imagine how an AI might respond to this forest. It would track data, measure tree positions, scan for movement. But could it feel the story? Could it sense the respect in how people walk there, or the way children are taught not to point at the trees? Maybe not. Some mysteries aren't in the facts, they're in the feeling, like watching clouds that seem to follow you, or hearing your name when no one called it, things that don't need proof to feel real. These trees, moving without roots, staying alive without soil, challenge what we think life requires. They don't chase light. They don't fight for space. They just shift, slowly, gently, as if dreaming on their feet. And maybe we're not supposed to understand. Maybe the purpose of some stories is not to solve, but to feel. Like a quiet song you can't forget, or a soft breeze that carries, a smell you remember from childhood. Not everything needs an answer. Some things need only presence. So if you've ever felt something move inside you slowly, something that took days or years to understand, know that you're not alone. We all have sacred forests within us, parts that shift when no one is watching. If this story stirred something in you, even just curiosity or peace, I'd love to hear from you below. Where are you watching from? Have you ever felt watched by something gentle, something not human but not unkind? And if these kinds of stories help you sleep or dream or feel less alone, please like this video and subscribe. There's more waiting. Quietly, just beyond the edge of what we understand. Tears of dust. Have you ever cried without knowing exactly why? Maybe you were looking at an old photograph, or hearing a familiar song, or even just watching someone else cry. And suddenly, your eyes filled with tears, even though no words were spoken. Now imagine standing in a quiet room where the air is thick with memory, and someone gently sprinkles a fine, silvery powder into a small dish. Nothing loud happens, no fire, no scent, no sound. But moments later, everyone present begins to cry. Not with loud sobs or grief-stricken wailing, just silent tears rolling down their cheeks as if a forgotten sadness had been unlocked inside them. This was the ritual of the tears of dust, and the strangest part is that even now, with all the tools of modern science, chemists still can't explain why it worked. The powder came from a rare plant, ground carefully and mixed with minerals found only in one mountain valley. It wasn't inhaled or eaten, just present, hanging in the air, invisible. And yet it had the power to bring tears to the eyes of anyone nearby. If you've ever experienced a moment where emotion rose up out of nowhere during a quiet walk, or while folding laundry, or driving alone, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. These are the soft mysteries that make us human. And if stories like this one help you feel calm, curious, or even gently emotional, please like and subscribe. We're building a quiet community here, and your presence matters. The ritual was old, so old that even the people who performed it didn't fully know where it came from. It was passed down, not written, and only shared during moments of deep loss. A family would gather in silence. The powder, known only by its local name, would be prepared, and as it was released into the air, the room would begin to shift. First came a stillness, like the kind before a storm. Then the eyes would water. One by one, people would begin to cry. But it wasn't painful. It was more like an opening, like something stuck inside had finally found a way out. And what's strange is that it didn't matter if the person had known the one who passed. Even outsiders, scientists, travelers, visitors, would feel it. One researcher wrote in their journal, "I entered skeptical and left unable to speak. I cried like I had lost someone I didn't even remember." Scientists tried to take samples of the powder. They analyzed it under microscopes, broke down its elements, even recreated the mixture in labs, but they couldn't reproduce the effect. Outside the ritual, the powder was just dust, dry, light, harmless. Only in the space of mourning did it come alive. That's where the mystery deepens, because maybe it wasn't just about chemistry, maybe it was about context. Think about how a scent can make you remember someone, or how a piece of music can make your chest ache. The senses carry memory in ways we don't fully understand. And sometimes emotion follows without asking. The tears of dust might not be about what the powder is, but what it awakens, like a key that only turns in a certain lock. In this case, the lock was grief. And the key? A memory made of minerals and air. Some villagers believed the dust wasn't meant to cause sadness, but to release it. That tears were the body's way of untying knots. They said crying with the dust made the soul lighter, as if the burden of loss could leak out through the eyes. And oddly enough, many people who experienced the ritual said they felt clearer afterwards. Not healed, but softened, as if they had been holding their breath for years and were finally allowed to exhale. There's a strange kindness in that idea that grief isn't something to be hidden or solved, but something to be felt fully and quietly. In many modern cultures, we often try to avoid crying. We apologize when we do it. We hold it in. We hide our faces. But in this ritual, crying was expected. It was the goal. It wasn't seen as weakness, but as a sign that the heart was still open. That even in pain, we were still human, and that might be why the tears of dust still matter, even if we never solve the mystery of how it works. In a world that values speed and answers, this ritual reminds us to slow down and feel. Even artificial intelligence today is being trained to recognize emotions in voices and faces. But it still can't feel what a tear means. It can detect moisture maybe, or sadness in tone, but it can't feel the quiet storm behind it. It can't know the strange beauty of crying for someone you've never met, or the comfort of being in a room full of silent tears and not feeling alone. The paradox here is gentle but deep, a powder without scent or taste, doing something real but unexplainable. We want so badly to understand how things work, but sometimes the meaning is in the mystery itself, just like dreams that make us cry, or poems that stir something unnamed. Some truths don't need answers, they need space. The tears of dust are still used in that mountain valley today, though only rarely. The elders guard the practice, not out of secrecy, but out of care. They believe the ritual only works when the grief is real, that the dust listens, and that it will only respond if the moment is honest. There's something beautiful about that, a substance that only reveals its power when the heart is open, a ritual that only works when no one is pretending. Maybe that's what we need more of, spaces where emotion isn't questioned but welcomed, places where we can sit with our sadness, without needing to fix it, just to feel it, fully, and then let it go, like dust in the wind. If you've ever had a moment where your eyes filled with tears without warning, you're not broken. You're just human. And maybe in that moment, something inside you needed to be felt. If this story touched something in you, please share where you're listening from, or tell us about a time when tears came softly, without reason. Your story might help someone else feel seen. And if you'd like more of these quiet, thoughtful journeys through forgotten places and feelings, please like this video and subscribe. There are more mysteries waiting, not just in science or history, but in the small moments of being alive. Moments where something unseen moves us gently from within. 3-tongue chant. Have you ever listened to someone speak in a language you didn't understand, yet still felt something strange stir inside you, like the rhythm and tone were speaking directly to your body, not your mind? Now imagine sitting in an old temple, the walls covered in carvings, the air heavy with incense. A group of priests stands in a circle, heads bowed, and then something begins, something that makes your skin tingle. They are chanting, but not in one language, not even two. Somehow, all at once, each voice begins weaving 3 distinct languages together, simultaneously, fluently, as if their mouths belonged to 3 different minds. There's no stutter, no break, no switching. It flows like music, yet it's speech. And recordings of these chants, recovered decades ago and carefully examined, reveal something unsettling. No edits, no overlapping tracks, no trickery. Just a single, continuous recording of one voice speaking 3 languages in perfect harmony, all at once. Even today, no one has been able to reproduce it. Not linguists, not vocal coaches, not even AI voice synthesis tools. If you've ever tried to speak while texting or to read aloud while thinking about something else, you know how hard it is for the human mind to handle more than one stream of language at a time. Our brains usually lock into one path, but these priests seemed to step outside that limit. Have you ever witnessed something that felt so real and impossible at the same time? Something that made you question your understanding of what's humanly possible? If so, tell me where you're watching from and what it was. This is a space for soft curiosity, and your story might just connect with someone across the world. If you're enjoying this slow and thoughtful journey, please like this video and subscribe. We're building something gentle and real here, and your presence matters. The 3-tongue chant wasn't just a rare ritual, it was central to an ancient belief that truth, to be fully expressed, had to exist in layers. The first tongue was of the body, the physical words, shaped by breath. The second was of the mind, the structure, the reason. And the third was of the spirit, the emotion, beneath the meaning. The priests were trained for decades, beginning as children, to understand not just different languages, but how language lived inside the body. Some spoke ancient forms of Sanskrit, Aramaic, and early Mandarin, languages not even closely related, And somehow, during ritual, they could produce all three simultaneously, not in chaos, but in harmony, with each voice reinforcing the others like chords in a song. When analyzed by modern software, the recordings show vocal frequencies that shouldn't be possible from one human throat. No doubling, no overlay, just a single vocal pattern producing three streams of meaning. One researcher said, "It's like hearing a person hum, whistle, and speak, all different notes all at once, but with full grammar, rhythm, and emotion." To this day, some believe it's an illusion, that we're being tricked somehow by ancient audio. But those who were there say otherwise. They remember the way the sound made the room feel heavy, like time itself had slowed down. One elderly witness described it like this: "I didn't understand a word, but I cried. It was like being spoken to in a dream and waking up not knowing why you feel different." And that, perhaps, is the real mystery. Because sometimes what we hear touches parts of us that reason can't explain. Think about how lullabies calm children even when they don't know the words, or how a melody in a foreign film can make us feel lonely even when we're not alone. The chant seems to tap into something deeper, something below language, like a forgotten code in the human brain. Maybe it was a way of syncing mind, body, and spirit through vibration, or maybe it was a mirror of how our own thoughts exist in layers too. Haven't you ever felt one thing while saying another, or thought about something unrelated while smiling at someone? Maybe these priests were simply voicing all those parts of themselves at once, and that makes us ask, what if humans are capable of more than we think, but we just forgot how to access it? Even modern AI, for all its progress, struggles with true multitasking in speech. It can switch languages, yes. It can even imitate tones. But it doesn't feel the speech. It doesn't hold pain in one sentence while sharing joy in another. It doesn't dream. And yet we do, all the time. We live in paradox, smiling while grieving, laughing while tired, remembering while moving forward. The three-tongue chant, in its strange and impossible beauty, might simply be an outward reflection of that inner human complexity, a ritualized form of the layered way we live. And maybe that's why it feels so mysterious. Not because it's supernatural, but because it's too natural, too close to what we've buried beneath distractions, noise, and simplicity. The temples where these chants were once sung are quiet now. Some have crumbled, others were lost to time, but the recordings remain echoing in museum archives and among the few who still search for answers. Every so often, someone tries to learn it. They practice, they train their voice. They study linguistics and breath control. But none have succeeded, because maybe it isn't something you learn. Maybe it's something you become. And in a world that rushes for progress, there's something calming in knowing that some mysteries remain untouched. Not because they are locked, but because the key is not about knowledge, but presence. If this story brought up something unexpected for you, maybe a memory or just a strange feeling you can't name, I'd love to hear about it. Share your thoughts below. And if you'd like more stories like this, ones that slow you down and pull you inward, please subscribe. This isn't just about strange history or forgotten rituals. It's about remembering that sometimes the most mysterious places are not far away in the past, but hidden quietly inside ourselves. The Blue Harvest. Have you ever seen something so beautiful it didn't feel real? Like it belonged in a dream more than the waking world? Imagine walking through a quiet valley just before sunrise, the air still, the sky just beginning to lighten, and then over the crest of a hill you see it, a wide field stretching out like a calm ocean, glowing with soft blue light. But it's not water, it's wheat, ordinary in shape, familiar in movement as the breeze brushes through it, but glowing, softly, gently, like the stars never fully left the ground. This was the Blue Harvest, a field that, according to stories passed down through generations, would bloom once every 100 years, never twice in the same lifetime, and only when an ancient ritual was properly completed. Scientists who visited in modern times tried to study the glowing stalks. Samples were taken, tests run. But after the harvest ended, The glow vanished and the wheat turned a dull, dusty brown. They found no chemical markers to explain the light. No bioluminescence, no radioactive elements. Just normal grain, slightly brittle, already fading into dust. And yet, the villagers who had waited for a century said it had always been this way. Passed through whispers, drawings on walls, and songs sung in quiet kitchens. Some families had stories of grandparents who saw it once when they were children, and then nothing, a lifetime of waiting. Until again, the blue returned. What would you wait 100 years to witness? Is there something in your own life, maybe in your hometown or a story from a grandparent, that feels too magical to be explained, but too detailed to ignore? Share where you're listening from, and if you've heard of a mystery like this in your own land. Your story might open a quiet door for someone else. If you enjoy thoughtful journeys like this, soft and strange, please like this video and subscribe. You are part of something growing slowly and deeply here. The ritual, as described by the elders, was simple but exact. It had to begin at the full moon before the spring equinox. A circle of stones was placed around the field with small tokens, items, of personal meaning, not wealth, buried at each point. These could be buttons, handwritten notes, small wooden toys. Nothing flashy, just real things from real lives. Then the offering had to be made. Not to any named figure, but to time itself. They whispered their memories into the soil. Things they didn't want to forget. Things they had loved. Moments of joy, of sadness, of lessons learned too late. It wasn't a prayer, they said. It was a kind of remembering, a way of honoring the way life moves in circles. And then they waited. Days passed, then nights, and one morning, usually with no warning, the field would glow. It didn't spread quickly. It wasn't like watching a light switch flip on. It came in waves, first a corner, then a line, then the whole field lit up like a dream half-remembered. The wheat shimmered, not like neon or fire, but more like moonlight on water. It didn't hurt the eyes. It made people quiet. One visitor wrote that standing in the blue harvest made them feel like a child again before the world made everything so hard to explain. The wheat itself wasn't eaten. It was gathered carefully and stored in special clay jars. Some was kept in homes, others given to travelers who promised to pass the story on. But it wasn't about the wheat. It never was. It was about what it represented, that something ordinary could become extraordinary, if only for a moment. And that moment could be enough to last a lifetime. In a way, that's what many of us long for. Not constant wonder, not nonstop magic, but just one real moment that reminds us the world is deeper than it seems, like seeing a comet, or hearing a song that stops you mid-step, or meeting someone who understands you without needing you to explain. These are the moments we store away, the ones that help us through the duller parts of life. The blue harvest was like that, a soft reminder that time moves differently when you pay attention. Scientists tried to replicate the conditions elsewhere. They planted the same seeds, rebuilt the same ritual, but the glow never came. Some say it's because they didn't believe. Others say the land itself remembers and will not open to outsiders. But maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe some things are not meant to be repeated, only witnessed. Once, like a dream that leaves behind the feeling of having been somewhere important, even if the details fade. The villagers didn't treat the harvest like a miracle. They treated it like a responsibility, a promise to those who came before, and a gift to those who would come next. It was a reminder to leave behind something worth remembering. Not money, not fame, but care, kindness, attention. That's what the offerings were. Tiny pieces of memory. Small, honest parts of being human. A drawing from a child. A broken spoon used by a grandmother. A letter never sent. These things buried in a field, somehow, turned ordinary soil into a place of light. And maybe that's not magic. Maybe that's just what happens when people pause and feel deeply together, when they agree, even silently, that beauty matters, that memory matters, that not everything needs to be explained to be real. In today's world, where AI can generate images, videos, even voices, we're starting to forget what makes something feel true. But the Blue Harvest reminds us, it's not about perfection. It's about feeling something unexpected and gentle. Something that makes you stop and breathe slower. Something that touches a part of you that words don't quite reach. And even if no one can explain it, that doesn't mean it's not real. Sometimes, the things that make the least sense are the ones we need the most. If this story made you feel a little quieter inside, a little more aware of the soft magic around us, please share that feeling in the comments. Or just tell me your favorite moment of silence today. You never know who might need to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring these thoughtful, calm journeys together, please subscribe. There's more waiting for you. Stories hidden in dust, in fields, in memory, and in light. The kind of stories that only bloom once in 100 years, but leave their glow behind forever. Whispers from Ash. Have you ever held on to something from someone who's no longer here? A photo, a letter, a favorite old sweater, and felt like somehow their presence still lingers in that object? Like even though they're gone, some quiet part of them is still trying to reach you. Now imagine finding an old box in an attic or buried under floorboards, and inside it is a thin sheet of paper covered in faint, silvery writing. But as you look closer, you realize the words weren't made with ink. They were written in ash, the ash of a human being. And the message, strange, beautiful, emotional, is still perfectly readable, even though it was left there decades ago. This isn't a legend meant to scare, or a fantasy designed to amaze. These messages, written with the remains of the dead, were real, found in different parts of the world, always hidden, always unexpected. They weren't written by artists or calligraphers, just quiet people trying to say something that mattered, something final, something honest. What would you write if you had only one message left to leave behind? And what would you feel if someone you loved tried to speak to you one last time, not with a voice but with the dust of who they once were? If this thought brings something up in you, anything, share it in the comments or just tell me where you're listening from. Your story, even if it's only a few words, might echo in ways you don't expect. And if you find peace in thoughtful stories like this, gentle and mysterious, please subscribe and like this video. It helps build a community of listeners who are just as curious and tender-hearted as you. These ash-written messages weren't loud. They weren't commands or warnings. They were soft things. A name, a question, a memory. Remember the apple tree? She loved rainy days. Forgive me. Simple words. And yet, they struck something deep, because they were written by someone who was gone, and still they remained. Some cultures believed that ash held memory, that it wasn't just what was left behind, but a kind of quiet ink of the soul. In these places, people used ash as a medium when they had no pen, no time, just the need to speak. They would mix it with a little water or even breath onto a cool surface and trace out their final thoughts. Sometimes on wood, sometimes on stone, sometimes paper. These messages, left behind like shadows, were thought to hold emotional weight, not just symbols, but presence. And oddly, many of them didn't fade. Even without preservatives or careful handling, they stayed, as if the ash itself had chosen to remain visible, to keep whispering across time. Scientists tried to explain it. They tested the chemical composition. They ran heat and moisture simulations. But nothing was consistent. Some ash messages faded in days. Others lasted 100 years. It seemed to depend less on materials and more on something else, something unmeasurable, intention perhaps, or emotion. Or maybe the person writing knew something we don't yet understand about how grief and memory can cling to the physical world. And isn't that what we all wonder sometimes? Whether the ones we've lost are really gone, or just waiting in another form, just close enough to feel. We keep their clothes, we smell old books, we revisit the places they loved, and maybe, in some way, they're doing the same, leaving little messages. waiting for us to slow down and notice. In a world filled with fast conversations and digital everything, the idea of writing something in ash, a process so quiet, so intimate, feels almost impossible. But maybe that's what makes it so powerful. It asks us to think carefully, to say only what matters, to know that once it's written, there's no editing. And isn't that true of many things in life? A word spoken in anger, a hug we didn't give, a truth we kept hidden too long. We carry those moments like ashes inside us. Sometimes they're heavy, sometimes they blow away, but sometimes they form patterns, messages we need to see before we can move forward. One message, found under a loose floorboard in a small house, read simply, "I was afraid to say it then, but I loved you every day." It had been there for almost 50 years, and when the family found it, they wept. Not because they knew who wrote it, but because it reminded them of someone they hadn't spoken to in years. The message reached them anyway. That's the strange and beautiful thing about emotional truth. It doesn't need to be targeted to hit the heart, and maybe that's what these ash messages were really about. A way of telling the world that, even in death, some things remain unsaid, and some love never stops trying to be heard. Think of how we use emojis now, or how we post quotes when we're too shy to write how we really feel. These ash writings were older versions of the same longing. To be known, to be remembered, to matter. And in some quiet way, they still do. In museums, a few of these notes are displayed, protected behind glass. Visitors walk by slowly, often, saying nothing. The words are hard to read, faded and cracked, but the feeling lingers. And that's what matters. Not the perfect condition, not the author, just the weight of the moment they left behind. If you've ever lost someone and felt them nearby in the smallest thing, a smell, a phrase, a sudden wave of emotion, you've touched that same mystery, that thin line between memory and presence. The ash messages remind us it's okay not to understand everything. Some connections are not made through logic, but through quiet love. And maybe, just maybe, we don't disappear completely. Maybe we change forms, become memory, become story, become whispers in ash. If this story brought something up for you, I invite you to leave a comment, or even a few words you wish someone had said to you, or that you wish you could say to someone. This is a space for gentle honesty. No judgment, just reflection. And if you want to continue walking through these calm, thoughtful paths with me, please subscribe. There are more stories waiting, hidden in the quiet places, held in objects, remembered in soft ways. You are not alone. Some whispers, even from ash, are meant just for you. The Ritual Maze. Have you ever walked into a room feeling like one person and walked out, somehow changed? Even though nothing on the outside seems different, your heartbeat feels new. Your breath slows down or speeds up. You're not sure what shifted, but something did. Now imagine stepping into a maze, ancient and silent, carved deep into the ground where the sun barely reaches. You're told nothing before entering. No map, no clues. Just the understanding that those who enter come out altered in a way science still can't fully explain. This was a real place, a maze used in ritual initiations, where something strange happened to the people who passed through. When they entered, their hearts beat at a steady, normal rhythm. But when they emerged, sometimes hours later, sometimes a full day, their heartbeats were different, not just faster from fear or slower from exhaustion, but measurably changed in pattern, like music rewritten. If this idea makes you feel something, wonder, unease, curiosity, please share where you're watching from, or if you've ever experienced something that quietly rewired you from the inside. Your words, like this story, might help someone else feel a little less alone. And if you find comfort in deep, thoughtful tales like this, I gently invite you to like the video, maybe subscribe. It's how this quiet circle of minds keeps growing. The ritual maze wasn't a legend passed down in hushed tones. Archaeologists found it piece by piece, the structure surprisingly preserved. Not massive like a palace, but intricate. Turns. Within turns, walls just high enough to block the horizon. You couldn't see more than a few steps ahead at any time. The floor was smooth in some places, rough in others. The air inside stayed cool, even when the desert around it burned with heat. It was a test of something more than physical endurance. No tricks, no traps. Just space, silence, and a question. Who are you really when you're lost? And that's where the change began. People who were led into the maze as part of their culture's initiation rites described something they couldn't quite explain. Not hallucinations, not fear, but a sense of time dissolving, of the body becoming less solid, thoughts more fluid. One man, years later, said it was the first time he truly met his own heartbeat. He didn't mean in a poetic way. He meant he could hear it, follow it, almost as if it were guiding him. Scientists, when they studied participants after leaving the maze, noticed consistent changes. Heart rate variability shifted. Breathing patterns stabilized. In some, even the resting pulse dropped for weeks after. The maze somehow calmed the body, but only after it first made it uncomfortable. And doesn't that mirror life? We go through confusion, heartbreak, pressure, and if we survive it, we often come out steadier, stronger, more in tune with what matters. This maze wasn't about testing strength, it was about surrender. You couldn't solve it with logic alone. Some turns looped back, others led nowhere, and a few seemed to change between visits. That last part wasn't proven, but whispered often. People said the maze remembered you, or maybe it reflected you. A mirror, not made of glass, but of movement and stillness. And when you finally reached the center, or rather, the place where the path ended, it wasn't marked by gold or light or anything grand, just a circle of flat stones, and in the middle, a single mark, carved deep. A heartbeat, etched in stone. One continuous line with a soft dip in the center, like a breath being held. Some said that when you stood on that center stone and closed your eyes, your own heartbeat would echo in your chest louder than ever before. Not from fear, from recognition. Like your body knew it had been here before, even if you hadn't. It's strange how ancient people understood things we're still trying to prove. The relationship between the body and emotion, between space and memory, between silence and understanding. That maze was built without machines, without modern design, yet it created real, repeatable physiological effects. Today, we have sound, therapy, breathwork, mindfulness apps. But this was their version of nervous system regulation, a sacred space where the soul had to feel lost to find balance again. And maybe we all need a version of that. Not a maze in the desert, but a moment where we disconnect from distractions and ask quietly, what rhythm is my heart really beating to? Maybe you've felt that moment while sitting alone in your room at night, unsure why you're sad. Or walking into an exam room with your hands shaking, trying to steady yourself. Or standing at the edge of a new relationship, wondering if you can trust again. These moments are our mazes. They slow us down, confuse us, make us notice our bodies. But if we stay with them, if we let ourselves walk through with patience, we might exit with a different beat. Not perfect, but more honest. That's what the maze did. It didn't fix anyone. It just helped them meet themselves. One heartbeat at a time. No one has found the full map of the maze. Some say the paths keep shifting. Others believe that trying to map it misses the point. It was never meant to be controlled, only experienced, like grief, like healing, like love. And so the heartbeat left behind wasn't just a measure of the body, it was a trace of transformation, a quiet sign that something invisible had been touched. If this story made your own heart feel even a little softer, I hope you'll subscribe. Share your thoughts, your feelings, your questions. You never know who needs to hear them. Sometimes. We don't need loud answers, just the sound of another heartbeat reminding us we're not walking the maze alone. Stone that floats. Have you ever held something heavy in your hands, dropped it into water, and watched it sink straight to the bottom, because that's just what heavy things do? Now imagine holding a stone, rough and solid, shaped by the earth itself, and when you gently place it into a river, it doesn't sink. It floats, not like a leaf, not like a hollow shell, but like a secret, defying every rule you thought you understood. It's a small miracle that doesn't shout. It simply drifts there, still and strange. In ancient times, near certain sacred rivers, stones like these were found and used in offerings. People would gather in silence, carry these stones in woven cloths, then release them onto the surface of the water. And as the stones stayed above the current, floating calmly, the people around them believed something unseen had accepted their offering. If you've ever seen something in nature that didn't behave the way you expected, something so quiet but so impossible, it can shake your view of what is real. If you have a place like that near where you live, or a memory that stays with you, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. It helps create a circle of thoughtfulness that grows each time someone speaks. And if stories like this help you sleep, relax, or simply feel more connected to the wonder around you, I invite you to subscribe and stay with us. The floating stone wasn't made in a lab or designed by an engineer. It was found, again and again, near certain rivers that locals believed were blessed. Not all rivers, only some. And never in dry places. Always somewhere where the mist hung low in the morning, where birds sounded different, where people whispered instead of shouted. The stone itself wasn't flashy. Dark gray, sometimes with tiny holes, rough to the touch. But it had a strange feel to it, like it didn't fully want to be part of the ground it came from. When placed on a still bowl of water, it didn't just hover awkwardly. It rested like it belonged there. You could press it down, and it would rise again, not instantly, but slowly, as if remembering it should not sink. And that's the feeling many people described when they watched it happen. Not surprise, but a quiet recognition, like their heart had been holding a heavy thought, and suddenly it lifted. Some offered prayers, some let go of grief, some didn't say a word, but returned again and again just to watch the impossible become normal. Science now explains that some volcanic stones can float because of trapped air and low density. But the people who found these stones didn't need that explanation. For them, the mystery was part of the meaning. That even a stone, something meant to sink, to rest low and heavy, could sometimes rise. It's the same mystery we feel when someone forgives us when they have every reason not to. Or when we make it through a night we thought would break us. The impossible doesn't always need logic. Sometimes it just needs space to float. People used the floating stones during rituals of release. They'd write something, a word, a name, a memory, on a strip of cloth, tie it to the stone, and let it drift until the water carried it out of sight, not as a wish for it to disappear, but as a hope it would be transformed. They believed the river was not just water, but a path, and the stone was not just rock, but a message, and when the message floated, it meant it had been heard. And maybe that's something we all long for, to know our pain has been heard, that our small voice, even when tied to something heavy, still has a place in the current. Think about how often in life we carry things that feel too heavy: regret, fear, confusion. We tell ourselves they'll pull us under. But sometimes, like those stones, we surprise ourselves. We float. We keep going. We become part of something wider, slower, and kinder than we imagined. This is not just a story of geology or history. It's a reminder that heaviness doesn't always mean the end. That some weights are not meant to sink us, but to carry us forward in unexpected ways. And maybe you felt that too, during a quiet walk after an argument, when your thoughts slowly softened, or while lying awake during a storm thinking about someone you miss, and suddenly feeling their memory bring comfort instead of pain. Or even in those strange, dreamy moments where you don't know what tomorrow will hold, but for some reason you feel ready to meet it anyway. That's the floating stone. That's what it means. It means possibility in the shape of something simple, And in that simplicity, we're reminded of our own strength, not the kind that pushes or climbs, but the kind that releases, that trusts, that lets go, and that still rises. So if this story made your breath slow just a little, or helped you feel less alone in whatever you're carrying, I gently invite you to like the video, leave a thought in the comments, or join us by subscribing. There's more ahead, more quiet, wonders waiting to be noticed. And together, we'll keep finding them, one gentle mystery at a time. The eyes. Ritual. Have you ever stared into someone's eyes for just a moment too long and felt something shift, like the surface of things melted away and you saw something deeper, something honest and raw that words could never touch? Now, imagine a ritual built entirely around that single, powerful gaze, a ceremony where every part of the body was covered, wrapped in simple cloth, head to toe, except the eyes. Not as a disguise, but as an invitation. A way of seeing without being seen. It's strange to think how much we reveal without speaking. The tilt of our voice, the curve of our smile, even how we stand. But when all that is taken away, and only the eyes remain, something unusual happens. People stop performing. They stop pretending. And what's left is the truth of emotion, flickering, behind a fragile layer of skin and thought. In this ancient ritual, participants would sit across from one another in complete silence. No words, no names, just the space between two pairs of eyes. And for some, that quiet was more powerful than a lifetime of conversation. Have you ever had a moment like that? A connection where no one had to explain anything, but you just understood? If so, share that with us in the comments. It helps build a place where these quiet stories find a home. And if this kind of thoughtful wonder speaks to you, I'd love for you to like the video, subscribe, and keep exploring these forgotten truths with us. The eyes ritual wasn't performed in grand temples or under bright lights. It often took place in dim rooms, soft with candlelight, where the only brightness came from within. People said that when they looked into the eyes of a stranger during the ritual, they sometimes saw themselves reflected back. Not just their face, but the parts they kept hidden. Their worry, their love, their longing. And once seen, those parts no longer felt so heavy. It's strange, isn't it, how something so small, just a glance, can carry such weight. Think about everyday life, when you're nervous before an exam, and someone gives you a calm, steady look that says, "You've got this." Or during a moment of conflict with someone you care about, and all it takes to melt the tension is a glance that whispers, "I'm still here." Eyes don't lie the way words can, and maybe that's why this ritual mattered so much. In a world full of noise, the eyes offered stillness. They offered truth. Participants described the experience as emotional, even overwhelming. Some wept, others laughed. A few said they saw memories, almost like dreams, flicker across the eyes of those they faced. Not actual visions, but feelings so deep and shared, they took shape. And here's the mystery. Many who met in the eyes ritual said they felt deeply connected, even though they never spoke a word. Some described it like looking into a mirror that could see their soul, yet didn't judge it. That kind of connection, pure, quiet, and honest, is rare, and it's something many of us quietly long for, especially in a time when so much of life happens behind screens and rushed words. There's a soft kind of magic in stillness, in just being present. It's the same magic that shows up when you sit with someone in silence and feel comfort instead of awkwardness, or when a child looks at you with wide, unblinking eyes, and you realize they see everything, your tiredness, your worry, your care. The eyes ritual taught that when you remove the distractions, the costumes of everyday life, what's left is something real. It asked people to face one another not as roles or identities, but as souls. And that kind of seeing, deep and honest, can be healing. In some versions of the ritual, people would switch partners every few minutes, not to rush the experience, but to show how every pair of eyes held a different kind of truth. Some eyes were soft, others sharp, Some carried years of pain, others joy, but all of them carried something. And by being seen, people began to understand themselves. Can you think of a moment where you felt truly seen, not for what you do or say, but for who you are beneath all that? That feeling is rare, but it's unforgettable. The eyes ritual wasn't perfect, of course. Sometimes it stirred up emotions that surprised people: fear, shame, even anger, because being seen means being vulnerable. But even that discomfort had meaning. It was part of the process, a way of uncovering slowly and gently what we often hide, even from ourselves. In a way, the ritual is a reminder that we don't need complex tools to connect. We just need time, presence, and the willingness to see and be seen. In our world today, we often cover more than our bodies. We cover our emotions, our thoughts, even our hopes. We scroll. We speak fast. We hide behind polished photos and rehearsed words. But our eyes, they still tell the truth. And sometimes, when we dare to look a little longer, we find something we didn't know we were missing. So if this story made you pause, even for a moment, I invite you to carry that pause into the rest of your day. Look around. Not at screens, but at the people near you. Notice their eyes. And maybe, if the moment feels right, let them notice yours. There's truth in that space, and healing, and connection. Thank you for being here, for seeing, and for being seen. If this kind of gentle mystery is something you value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Together, we'll keep exploring the forgotten wisdom of the quiet, the ancient, and the beautifully human. Fire without smoke. Imagine seeing fire, but feeling no heat. Imagine watching it flicker and dance like any ordinary flame, and yet there is no warmth on your skin, no smoke in the air, and no crackling sound at all. Just a silent, glowing light that seems to hover in its own world, untouched by time or wind. That's what was said about the ritual flame discovered long ago in an ancient African chamber, hidden beneath layers of dry earth and rock. Some call it legend, others a forgotten science, but those who saw it claimed they could put their hand close to it and feel nothing, no burn, no sting, just stillness. Can you imagine that? A fire that doesn't behave like fire, a flame that lives yet doesn't feed on air like ours does. And if you've ever experienced something that didn't follow the rules, that felt out of place in the world but still deeply real, share your story below. These moments make our community stronger. They help remind us that wonder still exists. And if you enjoy falling into these mysteries with us, consider liking this video, subscribing, and joining us again for more thoughtful journeys like this one. The flame was found inside what looked like a ceremonial site, almost untouched by time. Stones arranged with care, symbols carved in walls, and at the center of it all, this glowing light that somehow wasn't consuming the dry wood it floated above. The people who first found it were stunned. They brought tools to measure its heat, but the tools gave no reading. They brought containers to catch its smoke, but there was none. What kind of fire does that? We grow up with fire as something we understand. Campfires on cold nights, candles in quiet rooms, the warmth of a kitchen, stove. It comforts and it warns. We know its rules. But this flame didn't follow those rules. It felt more like a symbol than a force, and maybe that's why it was used in rituals, to remind people of something deeper than heat, something more lasting than light. It's strange how things from the past can feel more advanced than the tools we have now, like how some old temples line up perfectly with stars or how ancient maps show places we thought no one had reached. This flame is one of those things, something simple, yet impossible, and yet it was real enough to cast shadows, real enough to glow against stone, real enough to leave people speechless. Think about the last time something left you speechless. Maybe it was a sky full of stars so wide it made you feel small, or a piece of music that moved you to tears even though you didn't understand why. That feeling, that quiet awe, is what people felt around this flame, Some believed it was sacred. Others thought it was a message left behind. But no one could explain how it worked. They tried to move it, but it would go out. They tried to recreate it, but couldn't. It would only burn where it was first found, as if the space itself allowed it to exist. And this brings up something deeper. What if certain truths can only live in silence, in still places, away from noise and rush? We often think knowledge has to be loud, fast, shared everywhere. But maybe some things are meant to be discovered slowly, held gently, protected. This fire, quiet and cold, became a kind of mystery that made people reflect. What else do we think we understand but really don't? In relationships, for example, we assume love means one thing: words, actions, time. But sometimes it's none of those. Sometimes love is just presence, a quiet moment where nothing is said, but everything is understood. The same way this fire said nothing, yet seemed to speak. And then there's the paradox of fire itself. It destroys, but it also gives life. It burns down forests but makes soil rich. It scares us, but also warms us. What does it mean for a fire to lose its danger and keep only its light? Is that what peace looks like? Something once powerful, now soft? The flame became a mirror to those who saw it. Some said it made them think of lost family, of calm nights, of things they missed but didn't know how to name. And this is how ancient things still speak, not through facts, but through feelings, through presence. And maybe that's the deeper truth here. Not just that the flame didn't burn, but that it didn't need to. It existed in its own way. And we, watching it, were the ones who changed. The mystery isn't always in the thing itself. Sometimes it's in how it makes us feel. This story isn't just about an ancient phenomenon. It's about how something impossible can make us pause, question, reflect. And that pause is rare and sacred in its own way. So if you felt that pause just now, if you felt yourself slow down, even a little, I invite you to carry that into the rest of your day. Notice things. Wonder about them. Let yourself not have all the answers. That's where the most beautiful parts of life often begin. And if you want to keep exploring these forgotten, quiet places with us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own mysteries in the comments. We may never solve the puzzle of the fire without smoke, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that it reminds us there's still so much left to learn, and even more left to feel. Sealing of blood. Have you ever looked at something ordinary, like a painting, a wall, or a ceiling, and suddenly felt that it was watching you? Not in a frightening way, but in a way that made you feel small, like it held stories you weren't ready to hear. That's the feeling people described when they stepped into a forgotten tomb deep beneath the ground, only to find the ceiling painted with strange symbols and figures. It looked like a mural at first. Beautiful, yes, but still, harmless. But then they lit the candles, and something changed. The soft golden glow slowly crawled up the walls, reaching the ceiling, and the paint began to bleed. Not in a dramatic way, not with drips or splashes, but with a subtle, steady shift. Colors that had once looked dry and faded turned wet and vivid, especially the reds. Shapes once dusty and still now looked alive, almost like veins pulsing just beneath the surface. The red didn't drip. It shimmered. It deepened, as if the painting itself had a pulse that woke up only when light was offered, and no one could explain how. Chemists came. Historians, too. They tested pigments, materials, light temperatures. But the reaction only happened inside that tomb, with those candles, that ceiling, nowhere else. It's strange, isn't it? How something as gentle as candlelight could bring such a change. It makes you wonder what else in life only reveals itself under the right light. Have you ever felt that in your own life, when someone noticed a part of you no one else did? Maybe in a moment of stress before an exam, when a friend gave you just the right word at the right time, or in a relationship, when someone saw through the walls you didn't even know you were building. Sometimes it only takes the smallest light to reveal the deepest color, and if you've ever experienced something like that, something ordinary, turning meaningful, share it in the comments. These shared stories are what give this space life. And if you find value in this quiet, thoughtful journey, I invite you to like the video, subscribe, and come along as we explore more mysteries together. Now, back to the tomb. The strange part wasn't just the bleeding effect, it was how it made people feel. Visitors didn't describe fear. They described calm, curiosity. Some said it felt like the ceiling was remembering something, as if it had seen generations pass and was finally allowed to speak again, through color. And when you stood beneath it, with the warm flicker of candlelight on your skin and that deep red glowing above, it felt almost like being inside a living memory, a still moment that stretched across centuries. Isn't that what many of us crave in life? To feel connected to something bigger, older, wiser. To feel like our small lives are part of something more. That ceiling reminded people of that. The way an old song can suddenly bring back the smell of your childhood home, or how a certain place can feel familiar even when you've never been there before. Science couldn't explain the bleeding effect. Some suggested hidden materials that reacted to heat. Others thought it was a trick of the light or moisture in the air, but nothing conclusive. Even with modern tools, the ceiling held its silence. And maybe that's the real power of it. Not just the mystery of how, but the invitation to ask why. Why would someone paint such a thing in a tomb? Was it meant to remind the dead of their bloodline? Or was it for the living, to feel the presence of those who had passed? The answer, like so many ancient questions, might never be clear, but in a way that's what makes it matter. Just like in life, where not everything can be explained. Emotions, memories, even dreams. They don't always follow rules. Sometimes we cry for reasons we don't understand. Sometimes we feel seen by someone we just met. And sometimes a ceiling painted centuries ago can teach us more about presence than any book. There's a kind of beauty in not knowing, in letting wonder stay open. It keeps the world soft, curious, alive. And in that tomb, under that ceiling, people reported feeling strangely alive, as if the room itself breathed with them, as if their heartbeat matched the silent rhythm of something ancient and unseen. One visitor said it best, "It was like the ceiling had been waiting for me." Maybe that's what this is all about. Not the blood or the science, but the waiting, the readiness of the past to speak again, if only we'd listen. And if a simple flame can bring a painting back to life, what else are we not seeing just because we haven't lit the right kind of light, in ourselves, in others, in the quiet rooms of our own minds? So tonight, as you rest, I invite you to let the questions stay open. Let your thoughts drift gently, like candle smoke rising toward a ceiling full of unspoken stories. And if something in this story stayed with you, share it. Like the video. Subscribe. This journey only grows richer when we walk it together. After all, the most powerful things in life often reveal themselves not in the noise, but in the flicker of quiet light, just like the ceiling of blood. Sunless awakening. Imagine waking up in complete darkness for 40 days straight. No sunlight, no clocks, no sound of birds or wind, just the slow ticking of your own thoughts. Now imagine that after all that time below the surface, when you finally come back up, you describe the sunrise in perfect detail, the colors, the warmth, the way the shadows stretch and fade, but you hadn't seen the sun once. That's exactly what happened during an experiment where people stayed deep underground for 40 days. No light, no visual references. And yet, when it was over, their minds painted the sunrise as if they'd watched it every morning. Isn't that strange, that the human brain can recall something so vividly even when it hasn't seen it in so long? Or maybe even stranger, that it can imagine something so accurately without seeing it at all. It makes you wonder, how much of what we know is stored not in our eyes, but in something deeper? Maybe memory isn't just about remembering, maybe it's about being. Have you ever missed someone so much that you could hear their voice even when they weren't there? Or gone through a dark time in your life, like before a big exam or after a breakup, and yet you still remembered the light? It's as if the sun lives inside us even when we don't see it. That's the mystery behind this story. How could those participants describe the sun's rays slipping over the horizon, the way the air shifts, even the soft gold color that appears just before morning? Some scientists said it might be memory. Others said maybe their biological rhythms help them feel the time. But none of that explains the accuracy. They didn't just say, "It looks bright." They described real detail, the kind only someone who's watched 1,000 sunrises could know. If you've ever experienced something similar, knowing something without being told, or sensing something before it happens, share it in the comments. It's comforting to know we're not alone in these quiet, strange experiences. And if the story pulls you in, I invite you to like the video, subscribe, and join us on more gentle mysteries like this one. Now let's go deeper into the mind, because that's what this story really touches. The space where our thoughts go when we're not distracted. 40 Days in the Dark forces people to sit with themselves. No phones, no mirrors, just silence. At first, they said it was hard. The hours stretched endlessly. Some felt restless, others scared. But then, something shifted. They started remembering things they hadn't thought about in years. A childhood smell, a conversation from long ago. Even dreams came back more clearly, as if the absence of light helped their mind turn inward. And maybe, in that stillness, they reconnected with something ancient. The natural rhythm of their own body, or the memory of sunlight stored deep in their cells. Isn't that what meditation teaches us? That when we turn off the outside world, something powerful awakens inside. In a way, this story is about belief too. Not in a religious sense, but in how much we rely on the unseen. We believe the sun will rise tomorrow, even if we're underground. We believe in love, even when the person we love is far away. We believe in hope, even in our darkest hours. And sometimes, those beliefs become real, tangible, just like the sun those people described. And maybe that's why their descriptions felt so true. Not because they saw the sun, but because they remembered how it made them feel. That warmth, that light, that quiet assurance that no matter how long the night is, morning always comes. We all go through our own versions of 40 days in the dark. Maybe it's a hard season, a long illness, a job we don't love, a feeling of being stuck. But what this story reminds us is that light can still live in us, even when we can't see it. And when the time comes, we'll know exactly how to find it again. Our minds are more powerful than we think. They carry not just facts, but feelings, shapes, sounds, light. They carry the smell of rain before it comes, the taste of a favorite meal from years ago. They carry the sun, even when we're buried deep below. And maybe that's what makes us human, not just our ability to think, but our ability to remember beauty, even in silence. So as you rest tonight, let that idea settle gently in your mind. Even if you feel like you're in a dark place, the sunrise still lives inside you, the warmth, the color, the stillness before light returns. It's all there, waiting. And if this story brought you comfort or made you think in a new way, leave a comment. Let's build a quiet space together. Like the video. Subscribe. Because, even in the silence, we're never truly alone. And like those people who emerged from darkness with the sun in their mind, maybe you too are holding more light than you realize. The spiral sleep. Have you ever closed your eyes just for a moment, thinking you'd rest your mind, and then woken up hours later, completely unaware of how much time had passed? Imagine doing that not on a bed or couch, but lying down inside, a spiral of ancient stones, placed carefully into a formation that curves like a soft swirl in the earth. Now imagine that when you wake up, you remember dreams that don't feel like dreams at all. You remember images of places you've never been, events that haven't happened yet, and faces of people you've never met, but somehow feel familiar. This was the case with the spiral sleep phenomenon, a strange and quiet mystery where people would fall into deep, sudden sleep just by lying inside these spiraled rock patterns. No sounds, no rituals, just silence and stone. But when they woke up, they didn't just say they had dreams. They said they saw the future, not in the dramatic way of seeing disasters or visions in fire, but simple things, walking a path they hadn't seen before, touching a tree that didn't exist yet, or holding the hand of someone they hadn't met. What's even more unusual is how calm and rested they felt after waking, as if they had just returned from something deeply important but entirely peaceful. Have you ever had a dream so real it stayed with you for days? Or maybe a moment of déjà vu, where you felt like you had already lived a scene before it happened? If you've ever had that kind of experience, you're not alone. Share it in the comments. Your quiet memories might comfort someone else, and if this story already has your curiosity awake, feel free to like the video and subscribe, because we explore many quiet mysteries like this one. Now, back to the spiral. Scientists have studied these formations for years, trying to understand why they seem to have such a powerful effect. The rocks are usually placed in natural landscapes, valleys, open plains, or hillsides where the wind moves slowly. They're not large structures, maybe only the size of a small room, but somehow, the moment people lie down in the center, everything slows down. Breathing, thoughts, worry. It's as if the spiral shape draws attention inward, gently pressing the mind to let go of daily concerns. One researcher noted that people's heart rates dropped, and their brain waves showed a rhythm close to deep sleep or meditation, within minutes of lying down. But what no machine could explain was why the dreams felt so vivid. Some participants said they didn't even feel like they had fallen asleep. They just drifted. Others said they heard soft whispering, like wind through tall grass, guiding their thoughts. Some even described colors and shapes they'd never seen before, patterns that later matched art or symbols from cultures they didn't know. It raises a quiet but powerful question. Is it possible that our minds know more than we think? That in stillness we can access memories or visions not from the past, but from what hasn't happened yet? In real life, this touches things we all deal with. Think about the night before a big decision. Choosing a career path, ending a relationship, moving to a new place. Sometimes we lie in bed and our mind plays scenes of what could happen. It's not always logic. It's a feeling, a vision, a silent tug in one direction. What if that's the same part of the mind that these spirals awaken? The part that gently points toward what's coming, if we're quiet enough to listen. In psychology, this relates to intuition, that deep sense you get without needing proof. Like when you sense someone is kind before they even speak. Or when you avoid something without knowing why, only to realize later it was the right call. The spiral sleep might just be a physical version of that same quiet instinct. The rocks don't create magic. They simply offer a shape, a stillness, where the mind can speak without noise. And if this feels hard to believe, consider how simple things in life can carry deep effects. A warm drink can comfort the heart. A familiar song can bring back years of memories. A walk in silence can clear a week's worth of worry. So why? Not a spiral made of stone, gently reminding us of what we already carry inside. One participant in the spiral said that while sleeping there, he dreamt of a road with 7 curves. A year later, while on a trip to a new country, he found himself on that exact road. Another said she saw herself placing a flower on a grave she didn't recognize, and 3 months later, after reconnecting with a long-lost relative, stood at that very place. Were these just coincidences? Or did the spiral help them tap into something already forming in their lives, just not visible yet? That's the deeper layer of this mystery. It invites us to think not just about dreams, but about time, memory, and the power of stillness. Maybe the future isn't a place we travel to. Maybe it's something that grows quietly inside us, and certain moments, certain shapes, help us hear it more clearly. As the night wraps around you, think about that for a moment. What if your mind already holds soft visions of where you're going? And all it needs is quiet space to let them rise. Like gentle waves, like the turn of a spiral. If this story has opened something in you or helped you reflect in a new way, share your thoughts below. Every experience matters here. Like the video if it brought calm to your evening. Subscribe if you'd like more thoughtful mysteries. And remember, even the quietest moments can hold glimpses of tomorrow. Sometimes the future whispers. All we need is a still heart to listen. Cave of Tongues. Imagine walking into a cave so silent you can hear your own heartbeat, only to look up and find every wall, every surface, floor to ceiling, covered in writing. Thousands of markings, symbols, letters, none in any language we know. Not ancient Greek, not Egyptian, not even close to anything from any culture we've recorded. Just rows and rows of unknown script wrapped around the stone like the cave itself is trying to speak. The air is cool and dry, but thick with a strange feeling, as if the space is holding a message meant for someone, but not yet understood by anyone. Now imagine standing there and feeling like those symbols are watching you, not the other way around. That quiet moment when you realize that you're not just looking at something mysterious, you're inside it. A cave of tongues, they called it. And no one has ever been able to translate even a single sentence. Have you ever seen something that felt important, even though you didn't know why? Maybe a dream, or a drawing, or a sentence that stayed in your mind for no reason. If so, share your experience below. You might find someone else has felt the same. And if these kinds of soft, thoughtful mysteries interest you, you're welcome to like this video or subscribe so we can keep exploring together. Now let's stay here a little longer in the cave. The writing isn't messy, it isn't wild. It's careful, delicate curves and sharp edges repeating again and again, in patterns that suggest rhythm, maybe even music. Some believe the cave wasn't carved by just one group, but over generations, as if different people returned to the same place, adding more lines without ever changing what was already there. Others believe it was done all at once, by a single community with knowledge we've completely lost. What makes it stranger is that the symbols don't match anything, not math, not language, not even the kind of simple drawings you see in other ancient places. They seem to have purpose, but no one knows what that purpose is. Some researchers say it might be spiritual, a form of offering or prayer. Others think it might be a record of thoughts, stored away not to be read, but to be felt. That's an idea worth sitting with. What if not all writing is meant to be read with the eyes? What if some messages are written just to calm the soul, to make the person writing feel seen by something greater, or maybe even future generations? In life, we do this often without realizing it. When someone writes in a diary or leaves a note on the fridge or even carves their name into a tree, they're not always trying to communicate something clear. Sometimes they're just saying, "I was here. I mattered." And that's what the cave might be. Not a puzzle to solve, but a collection of quiet voices, all whispering through time. This brings up something deep about how we use language. Words can bring people together, but they can also create confusion. Two people can say the same thing and mean something completely different. Or say different things and feel the exact same. The cave reminds us that meaning isn't just in the words, it's in the way they make us feel. The feeling of mystery, the feeling of standing in a place that holds more than it shows, and the strange comfort in knowing that some things will always be unknown. This touches something deep in our minds, the part that seeks answers, but also respects wonder. Like when you're sitting under a sky full of stars, knowing you'll never count them all, but still feeling peace in looking up. Or when you hold a childhood memory that doesn't fully make sense, but still brings warmth. The Cave of Tongues is like that, a place that speaks, even if you don't know what it's saying. And perhaps that's why so many visitors report the same thing. After standing in its center, a soft quietness inside, not confusion, not fear, just stillness. One traveler said it felt like hearing a lullaby in a language they didn't understand. but still recognizing the melody. Another said it was like standing in front of a mirror, but instead of your reflection, you see thoughts you didn't know you had. That's the paradox here. Something that should be frustrating, walls of writing we can't decode, turns out to be comforting. Maybe we don't always need the exact meaning. Maybe presence is enough. Maybe knowing that people once stood in that same cave, cared enough to write something and left it behind, not to impress or inform but just to mark their place in the world, is enough. The cave is located far from cities, far from crowds. It takes effort to reach, and maybe that's part of the experience. You leave behind your schedule, your phone signal, your plans, and when you arrive, you step into a quiet world of stone and script, where nothing moves but your breath. A place untouched by hurry. A place that reminds you that not all value comes from answers. Sometimes the most lasting feelings come from mysteries. And as you drift into rest, consider this: how much of our daily life is made up of things we don't fully understand. Emotions, dreams, love, memory. We move through them every day, guided more by feeling than fact. Maybe the cave is a mirror for that part of ourselves, a space that doesn't give answers, but invites us to sit with the beauty of not knowing. If this thought helped you feel something tonight, share your reflection in the comments. You never know who might be reading, quietly feeling the same. Like the video if it brought calm to your thoughts. Subscribe if you'd like more gentle journeys like this one. And remember, sometimes silence carries the loudest messages, and the words we don't understand are the ones that stay with us the longest.